Good morning. It's 10 o'clock already. My apologies for the delay in getting here. I'll call the Special Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Being none, then we'll go forward to presentations. Mr. Shelton, perhaps if you could give us an outline and an overview.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This morning, staff will be presenting the preliminary draft budget. The draft budget, as you've seen from the presentation, does show how staff have brought in, as directed, a budget that does meet the budget target. In addition, as directed, we've also set out what the impact will be in terms of service levels and the risk associated with the various items that have been put on the table to reach that target. It has been a very challenging process, and as you know, it has led to us moving away from our more traditional schedule this time around, and those challenges and the schedule will be set out as we go through the presentation. What we're looking for today from Council would be your feedback, any questions that you have, also to be brought right up to speed in terms of the information in that preliminary draft. The next steps will be set out through the presentation as well. So in keeping with what we've implemented over the last couple of years, we have an SLT budget liaison member, which is Peter Nohammer this year. So Peter will do some introductory comments. Then we're going to turn it over to Mike, our treasurer, to get into the agenda. Wanda in terms of public consultation, and then Mike will get you through the various detail of the slides. And at the very end, there would be questions and the opportunity to provide direction, and also we'd set out, as I indicated, next steps. So with that, we'll start with Mr. Nohammer.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. And I won't repeat some of the process, as Bob's done an excellent job in providing that. But I did want to just, Mr. Mayor, members of Council, you'll recall from the workshops held on November the 14th with respect to the operating budget, and November the 21st with respect to asset management and the financial sustainability piece that our treasurer took you through. Just wanted to just remind members how staff have been working through the challenges in bringing forward a preliminary draft budget that you will see presented today by our treasurer. And in fact, staff have been working from all departments since much earlier in the year, preparing their budget submissions, and your operational leadership team has worked since the summer to strive towards ways in which the target tax increase can be brought forward today. With respect to the operating budget in particular, it's important to recall from the workshop that things like extraordinary expenses and enhancements to services, it's important how they are not to erode the base budget in order to preserve the high caliber of services delivered to and expected by our community. And lastly, before I turn it over to our treasurer for the presentation, just wanted to reiterate that throughout 2017, staff will be bringing forward financial policies relative to addressing inflationary pressures and growth expenses in the operating budget, and sustainability efforts for the capital budget tied to appropriate funding sources. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of Council, and the public. About to present the 2017 preliminary draft budget. For the new members of Council, I just wanted to point out, the reason we refer to this as the preliminary draft budget is because this is Council's first opportunity to see the budget. So rather than call it a draft budget, which would imply that you've had an opportunity to go through it, we refer to it as the preliminary draft budget. So this is the budget submissions as they've been refined. So today we're going to talk about the business planning and budget process. Just quickly give you an update where we're at in that. Wanda will talk to community engagement. We'll talk a bit on council priorities. Then I'm going to give you an overview, a high-level overview of the capital and operating budgets. We will be providing further details in the coming week. And as requested, a outlook for 2018 to 2020. This is just a preliminary outlook, but to give you some idea, based upon the drivers we know at this point, what we're anticipating for the future. Next slide. As far as the budget process, this diagram just shows that as we're moving forward, we're in the third box on the bottom, December 5th, the presentation of preliminary draft budget. So there has, as you can see, there's been a substantial work to date, and there's still work to come. This evening, the fees and charges will be going forward for approval, as will the interim allocation or appropriation to fund us until the budget is approved. I'll now turn it over to Wanda for the community engagement.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, council, staff, and public. 2017 budget engagement, we decided to take a little bit of a different approach. The last 4 years, we've used an online budget tool that was asking people where they wanted to put their budget dollars according to service bundles. This year, we basically used gamification and experiential marketing to engage the public a little bit more. We were trying to anyway, a little bit more than previous years, and we're quite successful. We actually doubled our budget engagement as far as participation goes using these methodologies. So phase one, we went to Touch a Truck, which was attended by thousands, and we also utilized our website and social media. We had a game that was called, put your money where it matters, and people were able to put a budget dollar into one of the buckets based on council strategic priorities. This is just a snapshot of our website, which was visited by over 500 people. And basically, we had the budget game online as well. You could do it online, not just attend an event. This is a snapshot of all the tools and tactics that we used, including a property tax bill insert to all households. As I mentioned, the community events, numerous ads in the town page, media releases, e-newsletters, and of course, a ton of social media, tweets. I think we had over 30 tweets and engaged over 10,000 people through social media. As I mentioned, this is just a snapshot at Touch a Truck. As you can see, our budget booth, that little circle there is Mike and the budget committee standing there at the booth. Excellent engagement exercise where we got to chat with hundreds of residents around our budget and around council strategic priorities. And I know a number of councillors were also out at the budget booth and chatting with people, and also had a budget dollar to insert into the budget booth under one of 5 strategic priorities. Award-winning, yes, award-winning Touch a Truck event. Thank you.
And that was real Mike, not cardboard Mike.
That was the real
That is
Mike.
Mike,
He showed
real
up
Mike.
that day,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay.
The results as of November for our engagement, as you can see, community projects, that was the number one bucket that people wanted to put their budget dollar into, followed by ensuring safe streets came in second, and revitalizing community center lands and addressing downtown parking, which came in third as well. And you can see the results of that across the bottom. We also had dozens of open-ended comments that were put in the other bucket, and you'll be seeing those in information report coming forward to council, along with all the results from our engagement. Phase 2, we tried something a little bit different. We had a suggestion to do a bit of a focus group, and this was a budget game where we had 5 different representation stakeholders from different community groups, including ratepayers, that came out, and they basically took a bucket full of money and separated it amongst a number of projects, 15 projects to be exact. And as you'll see, the next slide, the blue, those were projects that were actually overfunded, funded more than what the original recommendations were. The green was funded, and the yellow is basically to keep levels as they are. And the red were the projects that they felt that were not funded going forward. Now, this was just a community focus group with a number of key stakeholders. It was an excellent exercise for sure, and this is just the results based on that focus group. But the facilitation of that was provided free of charge from a company who wanted to sort of get into the market. They've been doing this in the States, and I think those who attended would say that it was a good exercise for sure. And that was essentially the community engagement for budget for 2017. We deem it as quite a success. We do have our community survey results, as I always go back to, that talk about service levels and maintaining our service levels, and that's what we've heard from the community over the last several years and the last community survey. But overall, a success, and I would turn it back over to Mike.
Thank you, Wanda. Sorry, I missed one little housekeeping detail. You were given copies of the presentation. There's been some slight additions since the distribution on Friday. There's been 2 more pages added. That's pages 29 and 30. They were not in the original distribution. They provide a little more information. And we picked up also some typographical errors as well, so we've cleaned it up a bit. Okay, segueing from the community engagement, one of the things we said we would do in this budget process, a new approach, is to focus on council priorities. So looking at the council priorities for 2017, these are the 5 priorities that were chosen. And we're going to go through them all and show you what is included in the budget. Now, a lot of stuff included in the budget is carryovers from previous years or dollars that have been committed, either in capital or operating budgets. There are some new dollars, but that has been restricted by the budget. We haven't had the opportunity to put a lot of enhancement in there, but we're going to show you what the status of these are. I'm just going to go through these on a high level. The directors and commissioners are here. If at the end of the presentation there's a request for additional information. So the first priority was revitalizing our community center lands and addressing downtown parking needs. As you can see, there are some things included in the budget. These are items carried forward from 2016, such as the funding for wayfinding downtown, and there's an item downtown park or long-term parking issues, which has been deferred for future consideration. Strategy for vibrant and livable communities along the corridors. A lot of planning studies included in the 2017 budget. These, again, essentially were carryovers. We also have some positions, and I'm going to address some full-time equivalent positions that are included in the budget. You'll note, though, that what we've done is anything that is included in the proposal at this time, they are not funded from taxes. They are from rates or reserves or capital, and I'll point them out. So for instance, in this case, we have 2 new positions recommended for the building department. These would be funded from building permit fees and would have no impacts on tax. We're also looking at a water inspector, which would be funded from the water rates. There's a number of items, 1 position that is not included in the 2017 proposal. This position would have been funded from taxes and therefore has not been included. Supporting community and neighborhood projects, otherwise sometimes referred to as the playbook. There are some capital projects that are going forward. We have the Magna Center fitness facility, which was approved in the 2016 budget, and some other facility items. Items not carried and put for future consideration are listed there. Okay, they're just listed there. Ensuring safe streets. We have as you recall, back in 2015, there were enhancements that are approved to be phased in over 3 years. The sidewalk snow clearing, the third phase-in for $100,000 is included in the 2017 budget. Items not included are the extension of that snow clearing to courts and elbows, and an additional $55,000 to account for growth that's happened since the original plan. We also have in the 2015 enhancements included $50,000 a year for traffic mitigation. It's being recommended that the third phase of that be deferred. Organization Ready 2020 is preparing us for the future. The number 1 item is the increase to the asset replacement fund, which is included in the budget. It's equivalent to a 0.6% tax increase. That would be $330,000 being added to the infrastructure levy. There's a number of positions there. The first 2 in engineering. The capital projects coordinator, that would be funded from capital. and the Senior Environmental Coordinator is being funded from grants. The Water Quality Analyst is being funded out of water rates. The Health and Safety Coordinator is a temporary position. I believe it's a 2-year contract, and that would be funded from reserves established in the Human Resources area. The Financial Business Analyst is to provide financial support to our utilities and capital, and will be funded from those rates in the capital projects. Number of items not, these are items that were requested not being carried forward as they are being funded from the tax-supported budget. We're also on the employee development, recommending that be frozen at this point at the 2016 levels. So in a brief summary, when we look at the positions that were requested for 2017, there were the equivalent of 14 full-time equivalents were requested. The 7 that are funded by taxes have been deferred. Of the 7 that are going forward, that are recommended to go forward, 4.5 of them are funded from rates, being either the building permit rates or water wastewater rates. 1.5 of them from capital, and 1 from grants. And the temporary position being from reserve funds. Moving to the capital budget, we have a recommended capital budget of $30.3 million. There have been deferrals of $2.7 million, and we'll provide you that list with information on what those deferrals are. Tonight you'll be presented, last Monday you were presented with the interim allocation, which had some capital projects to go for pre-budget approval. Those were essentially the grant items. There was also 2 items which are including the budget for replacements, the most significant one being an additional fire truck. 53% of the capital budget is for replacement items. That's the first line. The primary funding source is the asset replacement fund. We try to use that to the most possible. The other funding is the gas tax, our allocation to gas tax, which is $2.1 million, which by policy is used for the replacement of road projects, and $3.3 million from future savings and revenues to fund the water meter replacement project. 29% of the capital budget is for growth-related items, which is 72% funded from development charges. We attempt to maximize our use of development charges. Development charges cannot cover 100% of some capital projects. So on that basis, we've had to find funding from other sources, either our general reserves and operating budget or other sources. The grants line, this is a contingency budget. If we do not get those grants, we would not be going forward with those projects. So that $4.6 million you see there, funded from grants, if we do not approve those grants, and we believe we will know prior to the finalization of the budget whether we go forward with those or not, then we would take those out of the budget if that's the case. The important thing, though, is that the capital budget does fit within the funding envelope. When we project forward our consolidated asset replacement fund and our general reserves, which are being funded, funding some of the capital projects, we can see that the projected reserve fund balances for the end of 2017 will be at manageable levels and should not cause us great distress for the next couple of years after that. That's it on the capital budget. Moving to the rate-supported budgets, we have 4 rate-supported budgets. On the assumption that the stormwater rate does get established and approved by council this evening. The main criteria we judge on rate-supported budgets are their reserve levels going to be adequate at the end of the year. The starting point for the water and wastewater budgets is the 6-year water and wastewater plans, which were updated last year, presented to council. The stormwater will eventually have a 6-year plan after it's been implemented. At this point, we do not have we had a general plan that was presented in the information, but we do not have something that's been formally adopted by council yet. And the building department has recently undergone a review by BMA Consulting. For the water rate group, we've included all the enhancements that have been proposed, which include 1.75 full-time equivalents. So that's what you're seeing on the enhancement line. No change in the asset replacement fund at this point. We do not feel that it is necessary. We have adequate funding based upon our latest projections for asset replacement fund. We still have to continue to contribute to it, but we do not have to accelerate the contributions. In fact, we are number one in the province according to the most recent BMA study on our reserve levels. What we're looking at is the projected balance at the end of 2016, reserve fund balance at the end of 2016 would represent 8% of our annual revenues. The target is 5 to 10%, so we're rating that, and the 2017 budget would take us down to 6%. Even though we are projecting a deficit in 2017, we believe that is reasonable. When we look at the reserve fund levels, we're still staying within the 5 to 10% range. Being closer to 5% because of our reserve fund levels is probably a good target. On the wastewater, again, we have enhancements. In this case, 0.75 of an FTE. We've put in all the enhancements. Again, it's similar to water. To meet our legislative requirements, we believe that they're important. In this case, we do have an 8.5% increase in the asset replacement fund contributions. Though the wastewater asset replacement fund is healthy, it's not quite as healthy as the water rate, and we believe that's should be increased. And for 2016, our projection, and for 2017, in both cases, we're anticipating that the reserve fund, and this is the rate stabilization reserve fund, as a percentage of revenues is about 8%. So we're consistent there. For the stormwater rate group, for comparison purposes, we broke out the amount that is included. It says here in the tax-supported budget. Actually, that should be tax-supported in the rate-supported budget because there's a small component of that which is in rate-supported. As you can see, the 2017 budget that is proposed is just carrying over our 2016 budget into a separate rate group. Again, this is establishing the fact that we want to be revenue neutral, that we're trying to be transparent on this. We're just changing the funding source for these expenses. At this time, we're not budgeting for a surplus. We're not anticipating to build up the reserves until we get a better picture. We still have to establish a formal 6-year financial plan to see where we're going on this. And finally, we have the building permit rate group. It has enhancements, which are 2 full-time equivalents recommended to be added to the building department, again, to meet our legislative requirements. The BMA study recommended, BMA consulting, the review of the building permits, not to be confused with the BMA study, sorry, recommended that the reserve level should be 150 to 200% of the annual expenses. Our projection at this point for 2016, based upon the budget, is that would be 193%, getting close to the top limit, and at the end of 2017 would be 144%. So bringing that down a bit, the 200% level is actually quite high. So again, all rate groups being within the requirements for the reserve funds. Now moving on to the tax-supported budget. Could you go back one? Oh, you don't have the latest. Okay. Well, there is a slide here. The slide here you should have in your hard copies, which talks to the 2017 budget target, page 29. So this is just recapping the council-approved target, being 2.2%, no more than 2.2% for the town portion, 0.6% being the cap for the infrastructure levy, and combined to not exceed 2.8%. I then provided you, go back. Nancy, go back one. Go back one.
Yeah, that's the old presentation.
Another one?
That's missing those 2 pages.
Okay. I then gave you, do you not have these?
Yeah. These 2 pages are into what you distributed this morning. So,
Okay, great.
So we've got 2 pages, 29.
Okay. I'm sorry, I
They're not
apologize.
in
We
there
have the confusion. We have the wrong version up on the slides here. But the challenge we had on the hitting the 2.8% is with these extraordinary items. These were presented at the workshop, and they come to just under $1 million. These are items that exceed the rate of inflation, and to fit them, the workshop references, to fit them within the target, would be extremely difficult and necessitated, as it has in the past, having to reduce the provision for the base budget. So we identified these. Now, at that time, we also identified that waste management, because based upon the knowledge we had at the time, that waste management was not an extraordinary item. We would not have to deal with it in 2018. It appears at this time, and you'll get more information on this afternoon, that in fact may have an impact on the 2017 budget. When we went through trying to find our budget reductions, we didn't know that at the time. The recommendation, subject to refinement, would be that we would fund that out of reserves and defer the full impact to 2018. Again, subject to council approval. In addition to the $983,000 in extraordinary costs here, I just want to remind you that there was also $150,000 in enhancements carried over from 2016. That was the $100,000 for the sidewalk snow clearing, $50,000 for the traffic management initiatives. Central York Fire Services, because we de-annualized their hires, the town's portion of that was about $88,000, and we have some other items that added up. In total, $1.3 million had to be found to reduce the budget to hit the target. And we did do that. We did meet the target. Now, I want to emphasize one thing, though, that during the budget process, it always is, when staff prepare their budgets, part of their routine is they do look for efficiencies. In fact, not just during the budget process, but during the year, we look for efficiencies. Some of these efficiencies just naturally flow through the budget. They may not be of significant amounts on a global version, but they're included in that. So the efficiencies I'm going to talk to in this are the ones where they're more significant and they have some potential impact. On the same basis, all revenues are not just found when we need to hit the target. We actually increase our revenues as part of the budget process as well. And you see that in the fees and charges, where we're projecting some increases in our revenues on that basis. So what I'm about to give here in the presentation are things in addition to that. However, we do believe that these are manageable. The first two categories, the additional efficiencies and increased revenues, there are some risk and there's some impact, but we believe these are manageable. These are the type of things that we would normally have to do to be able to hit a budget target. And by the way, these are the four categories that we use for budget reductions we spoke of at the workshop. The last two, though, the further reductions, we do have some, staff does have some reservations on them, but again, we put some impact and risk statements in now. I'm just going to do very high level, walk through these budget reductions. After the presentation, the commissioners and directors will be available if further details are required. So on the additional efficiencies, again, as you said, we've outlined if there's any impact or risk. I just want to talk to one, the reduced copier lease. We found a way to reduce the copier lease by $40,000 by extending it an additional year. Normally, I would say this was non-sustainable, not include that, but we do believe that we could use 2017 as an opportunity to find other ways to decrease our copier costs, so that's why it's been put in. So these are things that have been submitted, and again, the caveat at the bottom, just to remind you, this is not all the efficiencies that have been found in the budget. This is just the ones that are significant, been noted at this point, and have some potential impact. The same thing on the revenue. This is not all that we've increased revenues by. There are other revenue increases, but we just listed off the ones that we believe could have some risk or impact. But again, on these first two slides, we believe these are manageable. Items 1 and 3, the add admin fee to engineering charges and increased garbage bag tag, these are actually included in the fees and charges that were presented last Monday and are going forward for adoption tonight. Items 2 and 4, the additional planning revenue, increased bylaw licensing, etc. fees, these are just estimates that the volumes can come in higher than were originally anticipated. But there is some risk on that. So those two we believe are manageable. Next ones we're talking about are just the cutting costs. And I just want to point out, because actually some of these have been done. The accountability officers, that actually has been done. And the two bottom items there, which relate to Central York Fire Services, I wanted to point out a couple of things on those. The items on Central York Fire Service, first of all, that just represents new market share, so which is 59.4%. So you'd have to almost add another half onto that to get the complete impact. These have already been approved by JCC. It's gone to recommendation to Aurora Council. Is approved them. So in essence, these have been submitted. In total, these items that have already been done amount to 111,000, or about 0.2% of a tax increase. I would suggest, though, that if we do anything on the fire, we still have, because these are items that will be carried forward into 2018, we do have the opportunity to put a reserve aside and not have that impact in 2018, but more on that later. So these are costs that were just basically cut across the board. We also have some adjustments to service levels. The first two items, though, are in essence deferrals to 2018. So they will have an impact on the 2018 budget.
Mike, that's Emerald Ash Borer and the third phase of traffic management?
Yes, the Emerald Ash Borer and the traffic management enhancement, yes. Mm-hmm. So the third phase of the traffic enhancement being deferred a year, additional monies required for Emerald Ash Borer. Again, whether it comes in 2018 or later, that these are enhancements that will still be necessary. So based upon that, we believe that although we've hit the target, that there can be some issues with sustainability. The sustainability could be in the fact that there's going to be some carry forwards, and this is what Bullet 2 is talking to. There's $368,000 of items that are going to be carried forward to 2018 if we stick to that target. In addition, the capital budget includes $240,000 worth of operating costs, which will impact 2018. And we know that we'll have also the full impact of the waste management, the new waste management contract. The other items here are relating to service levels. That in the items that the new monies that are not being recommended for council priorities, 186,000 of that we identified as being top priorities. They actually total 854,000 in total, but 186,000 are top priorities that are dollars not included in that. And service level cuts, as you saw, amount to $422,000. So going back to the workshop, this is a slide from the workshop. We started talking about the possibility of a budget policy which would help us move towards sustainability. That the use of a target is good direction. That we move away from using our growth revenues to subsidize the tax rate, that we use it for growth. The fact that growth doesn't pay for growth, but let's at least use the growth revenues, maximize on growth. And that in addition to the base budget, that we cannot continue to use the base budget to subsidize the extraordinary expenses and the enhancements in the budget that we're coming to an end, as you see, because we're having to make cuts on the budget. So we present an alternative, a second option for the budget, and I'm just going to sort of walk you through this slide here. So in both cases, we start with a base budget of 3.13%. Extraordinary items has identified of 1.78%. And then we have the manageable reductions. And the manageable reductions we can work with is 0.57%. So we would continue to do that even in the sustainable option. However, we're suggesting that consideration be given to not doing the non-sustainable reductions, which was the service level adjustments and the cost cuts, which amount to 1.8%, which, by the way, and this is coincidence, are almost exactly the same balance as the extraordinary items. So in essence, these cuts are funding the extraordinary items. Now, I did identify, though, on the service level, on the cutting of costs, there was 0.2% of items that actually have already been approved. So that, in essence, could have been included under that column. I would suggest, though, consideration could be given to putting that money into reserve so that we don't see the impact in 2018. Because of the 1.81% that is the further reductions, 0.67% of that is going to come back in 2018, and the rest actually is service level reductions or risks that could entail service level reductions. I'm also just suggesting under enhancements, the only enhancement we currently include in the budget for 2017 is the third phase of the sidewalk snow clearing, an additional $100,000. Consideration could be given to keeping that, adding the $50,000 for the third phase of the traffic initiatives, which again, that was subject to budget approval, and $100,000 of the $186,000 in top priorities, to, just over half of that, to put some funding into council priorities. And obviously, there can be some blend of these as well, but we put forth this as an alternative, an option to consider that we believe would be more sustainable both for the tax rate and for service levels. And this is what they would look like on an outlook. So going back to our budget policy, if we look at our net base, you'll see that the net base is approximating the rate of inflation. That growth, however, will still, as a transition, we'll need to use that to bring down the base budget. But in 2018, that we actually we stop using the tax growth, the assessment growth, to fund the base budget. And a lot of that will be used actually for the capital operating costs that are going to come in 2018, which are of a growth nature. I would point out, though, to hit that target in 2018, to find an additional 1.1% in manageable reductions is going to be extremely difficult when we consider the level of reductions we're doing in 2017 and previously did in 2016. That will be difficult to do. On a go-forward basis, again, hitting the target of 2%, we will have to find those manageable reductions, but this is a way of enforcing that we continue a culture of looking for efficiencies. You'll see that the extraordinary items balancing with the further reductions. I'll give you some details on extraordinary items on a go-forward basis. Enhancements, obviously to be defined by council. I've just said that for 1920, just to put some number in for discussion purposes, 0.25%, and projection on the infrastructure levy to phase it in up to 1%, which is actually the minimum that the Hampson report suggested. Now, again, these are just preliminary numbers. We wanted to meet the council request to provide a projection for 2018 to 2020. Now, on the extraordinary items on a go-forward basis, I just want to give you some details on that. So in 2018, we know we're going to have the new waste management contract. You'll be hearing about that this afternoon, and that's over $500,000. That will have to be included, absorbed into 2018 budget. We also have preliminary projections that are energy, specifically hydro costs, increasing at 15%. This may not happen, but at this point in our projection, we've included that just to be on the safe side. I've also included a provision in 19 and 20 for an additional extraordinary items that haven't been foreseen at this time. So in that sense, these numbers are conservative, but this is just to start the discussion for the budget to see how things are going forward. On the next slide is option B. And the changes we're looking at here is to not do the further reductions and to put the enhancements up to 0.45%. In this case, in 2018, we believe the manageable reductions of 1.1% would be much more manageable and much more achievable. Well, you also see, if you look at the net before enhancements in the bottom line, is that we're coming to a more level increases. They're starting to balance out a bit instead of the peaks and valleys. Now, you're going to ask me, well, what about stormwater management? I purposely wanted to show those first two slides without including stormwater management because I think it can sort of muddy the water when you're looking at the, no pun intended, it can muddy the water when we're looking at how things flow. So in the next two slides, again, these are just options A and B restated, showing the 2.6% reduction for the stormwater management. Again, that's just a one-time reduction, taking it off the tax. Okay. I wanted to bring this, to start a new perspective, a new way of looking at things. The average household's funding for municipal services, especially when we start taking things off the tax rate and creating new charges. When we look at the fact that we know that Newmarket has competitive tax rates, but we also have full cost recovery on our water and wastewater rates. To look at the total picture for your average household. So we see that in 2016, the average household paid $2,749 in property taxes on their water bill based upon 200 cubic meters a year. To hit the target, which is option A, that would then go up to $2,863. The adjustment for the stormwater management rate would reduce the taxes by $43, the water bill by $7. You pick up the $30 stormwater charge, and that's savings of $20 when you look all around. So $2,843 being the $20 savings. Option B, instead of the 2.8% increase, the 4.88% increase, we get a bottom line figure of $2,880. The difference between the two for the average household is $37. To put this more into perspective, in 2016, this represented the full funding for municipal services. This represented 2.37% of the average household income for the town, for Newmarket resident. The option A, again, we don't have the 2017 numbers now, so I've just done a modest increase in household income, would be about 2.43%, or option B at 2.46%. So the difference between the two options, $37 or 0.03% of your average household income. Again, we believe that Newmarket's tax rates are competitive. This is information from the draft BMA study for 2016. There's many different ways of slicing and dicing and looking at tax comparators. This one is based upon your detached bungalow. We can send out other graphs as well. So what are we going to be doing in 2017 to prepare ourselves for the 2018 budget? So this lists off some of the things that we want to do. We want to get back. We've had to defer the budget approval process this year because of the challenges. We want to get back to having, or at least the ability to approve a budget in December. There's advantages to that. But also what we want to do during the time between budgets is look for some sustainable budget reductions, not just budget reductions. Efficiencies are an ongoing process throughout the year. So these are some things that we suggest that the town staff should be looking into, and as well as Peter referenced, bringing in some financial policies and implementation plans. We talked about at the last workshop on financial sustainability, and a plan for our asset replacement fund, and coordinating in that with the asset management strategy, the asset management plan, and development charges. So these are all some things that we'll be doing during 2017 to prepare us for the 2018 budget. Then we have the next steps for the 2017 budget. I'll admit, I've given you a lot of information here. There's a lot of information at the workshops as well, so there's a lot here to digest. We're going to be preparing an information report, which will be going out by next Monday, which will provide additional details to the presentation we have here, as well as follow up any questions that you may have. There also is opportunity. Our first budget meeting is until early in January, that members of council can meet either with myself or staff as they see fit to get some additional information. We're going to continue to refine the budget, and especially the outlook, as we get more information. And there are the two workshops, and we're also going to answer the questions from the November workshops as part of the special committee of the whole meetings in January. And again, I just wanted to point out that because we've typically done our budget approvals in December, a question has come up, so how do we fund things until the budget is approved in February? That is the report that's going forward this evening to council on the interim appropriation, and that gives us approval for funding for the first part of the year. Then to finish off, just these are the budget schedules as we go forward. As you can see, you won't have to hear from me again until January 16th when we do a committee of whole, special committee of whole on capital budget and asset replacement fund. And that's all I have for this morning. Thank you.
And that not hearing from you is unless, of course, we want to have a conversation between now and then. So that's good. Okay, thank you. Questions, Councillor Bay?
Thank you very much, and Mike and everyone else, thank you very much for all the work you've done, both behind the scenes and the results of the behind the scenes work that accumulated in this presentation. So, I do appreciate and recognize all the work that's being done. I do have some questions and concerns and some clarification I need on a few things. One, I want to jump back to the sidewalk clearing. And on the phase 3,
What page are you at, Tom?
I'm sorry, I didn't write down the page number. I was just writing notes here, so excuse me on that. But basically, my question is, we heard a few weeks ago that the sidewalk snow clearing for phase 3 to get to 100% is actually based on 2013 sidewalks, the number of kilometers of sidewalks we had in 2013. And then there was a mention of $50,000, and I believe that was the figure to be deferred. So I guess my bottom line question on sidewalk snow clearing, when we're looking at next year to have it finally phased in, will that be all of Newmarket sidewalks or only 100% sidewalks based on 2013? Residents really want to know because we've been telling them all our sidewalks will be cleared by the
Mr.
third
Nohammer?
year.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so as you know, the $100,000 in this year's budget is to phase up to 85% of the sidewalks across town. There is still, I believe, another $100,000 phase-in to get up to 100% of the sidewalks as estimated in 2013 when the original estimates were brought forward. There is, you're correct, Councillor Vague, a further cost to bring in those growth sidewalks since the original costs were put in, and that is yet unfunded. So there are still two components to get up to a full 100% of sidewalks across town. A further $100,000 as the last phase-in, and a further $50,000 for the growth sidewalks since the program was originally estimated. And those have not been included in any budget so far.
Oh, all right, so in order to get to 100% of Newmarket sidewalks, which is what council intended,
Yep.
Not based on 2013, but 100% as an absolute, it'd be an additional $50,000.
For the growth portion.
For the growth portion,
And
yes.
as I mentioned, there's still one more phase-in.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, because right now we're at 85% based on 2013 kilometers of sidewalks.
correct.
So it would be additional $100,000 to get to 100% based on 2013 sidewalks, $150,000 to get to the absolute 100%.
That is correct.
Oh, okay. A question about our process this morning. Now this is a special committee of the whole, not a workshop. Is that correct?
That's right. This is a committee.
Right. So, are we able to make motions, or at this point just have a discussion?
Motions can be entertained, and that's the reason why we're having
Okay.
the
All right.
committee.
I have a few more questions, so I'm going to save them all, but this will result in some motions. A second question. We've been doing park equipment replacement for the last number of years, and we've been kind of freezing. My discussions with staff, as I've been informed, we've been freezing that budget, or that budget has been frozen for a number of years, while the costs have actually gone up 30 or 40% in terms of the equipment. We get most of our equipment from the States, and we know what's happening to the Canadian dollar. The result of that, and I know, and it may have happened in other parts of the town, but I'm just going to focus on one part in Ward 1, where we did equipment replacement and resulted in a fairly significant downgrade of what was there before. The community was not happy about that. I certainly wasn't happy about that. I have gone to the site with town staff. They look at it and say, yeah, it is definitely a downgrade from what was there before. the residents certainly would have preferred to have kept the old equipment as opposed to having this downgrade. I was told in this case, just to bring it up to the standard roughly that it was before we replaced equipment, would cost about $20,000. So my question is, and I'm not sure, perhaps Chris can answer or whatever, or is this happening across the board that when we're replacing equipment in parks, we're actually going with downgrades, fewer equipment, less equipment, et cetera? Is this a trend, or was this a one-off?
Mr. Newman?
We do have the Director of Public Works in the audience, and I'll first start by saying that a standard replacement of playground equipment is included in the budget. But what we're finding is that I guess there are requests for enhanced playground equipment and structures, and that component is not in the budget. It's one of those items that has been recommended, but insufficient funding to accommodate it, so it's been recommended to be deferred. And
Okay.
that's
Just
an
to be
amount of
clear, I'm not
$75,000.
talking about enhance. I'm talking about just meet the standard that we had there. We're replacing equipment with less than what we had there before. So we're not talking about enhance. We're just talking about maintaining the status quo.
Right. Chris?
Go ahead, Mr. Kawamoto.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. What the councilor is saying is correct. It is a volatile costing if a lot of the equipment does come from the States. Similar to gas prices, they are up and down. We're actually going out again for another equipment supplier very shortly for the new year. And again, if prices do come in a little bit lower than expected, we would be able to put in the equipment up to that budget. But you are correct that we have not raised that particular budget over the last few years.
Okay, so I think I was told 3 or 4 years. We haven't increased that, but our costs have gone up both on installation and the cost of equipment, and it's resulting that in some parks we're giving people less than they had before. What I'm hearing just from your response is that there's a possibility of getting equipment for a lower cost that will allow us to go back and correct, or at least, I'm not sure what words we're looking for, but to correct what we did before, where we have had parks that were downgraded, quite frankly, in terms of equipment.
Mr. Kawamoto, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We have the parks set on a specific schedule with respect to replacement. Obviously, if there's any regulations that change or health and safety issues, we also take that into account. So as we move forward, similar to any volatile product, we spend that budget for as efficiently and effectively as we can at that time. So depending on the cost of the equipment, the cost of the installer, we basically spend the budget to get the best product that we can at that time.
Okay. So again, I'm not sure if this was the fact that the playground equipment was a significant downgrade in this park, Audrey Saunderson Park. I'm not sure if that's happened in other parts of the town, or if it's something that ward councillors can look forward to next year. I am sympathetic that we have not increased that budget by a single dollar over the last 3-4 years, and this is the inevitable result of that you're going to get equipment downgrades in our parks. So I am going to ask, and I'm not sure what dollar figure to put to it, but if you can come back with what you feel that would be a reasonable increase in that equipment budget, because our constituents, our families, and our communities, they do not want to see downgrades in their parks. That is absolutely the wrong way to go. And if we as council have not raised that budget in that area in 3 or 4 years, when we know the costs have gone up, this is inevitable results. So I'm going to ask that we get some updated figures on that, something a little bit more realistic of what it costs just to keep the status quo. We're not even talking about enhancements now, because the other councillors will feel that. A third area I just want to bring up now, traffic mitigation. You're recommending that $50,000 that we did have budgeted for that be deferred. The issue of traffic, particularly speeding in our communities, etc., that's actually the #1 complaint received by York Region Police. It's the #1 complaint received by us, as a town, and it's the number one complaint all of us receive as ward councillors. This is something that myself and other members of council have been talking about a lot and pushing for. And when we say that we're going to, even after our traffic mitigation study, which was quite overdue, when we say we're going to defer that, even though it's the most significant, number one, most frequent complaint that we receive, we're really coming across as tone deaf, quite frankly. So I would like to see that put back in. I'd actually like to see a lot more put into that. I think we're way behind the curve on this. I don't think we've responded as effectively as we should have over the last few years. So I'd like to see at a minimum that $50,000 put back in. I think our residents have made it loud and clear, and I think this council has made it loud and clear that that is a priority. A couple of one more thing I have here. At the beginning of the presentation, when we did the community engagement, part of the feedback we received was that people want to actually see an increase in community events. Those are things that families really enjoy. Certainly with the events that we've had recently, we've set the bar pretty high. But those are events that are very popular, and also brings in, quite frankly, people from the whole area, not just for Newmarket, which is very good for Newmarket Business, Main Street, et cetera, et cetera. And we're looking at a slight reduction now. I think we call it adjustment, a slight reduction on that, on our community events, and it's going to impact, as you say, on things like the nativity that we have at Fairy Lake, the doors open, the around the world. We're quite surprised that we're looking to take back a little bit of funding from around the world when our population is becoming more and more diversified here in Newmarket. And it's also an area that our residents had said loud and clear, once again, on our budget engagement, that they actually want to see an increase in that. So once again, we're coming across as a bit tone deaf on this. If, we can't ask people, would you like, how do you feel about this? We get the feedback and then act in the opposite direction, act contrary to that. And the figure seems somewhat minuscule, approximately 23,000. So I'd like to, at the very least, see those type of investments in our community that draw in lots of people from outside of Newmarket also. I certainly don't want to see that deferred or cut out, and if possible going forward in the future, I think that's an area that, for even just economic development reasons, we should be investing more in. So perhaps, I'm not sure who can comment on that when it looks like we're cutting back on community events at about 23,000.
I wonder if we could hear from members of council, and then after that we could entertain some motions if someone believes in modifying some of the recommendations. But Mr. Sheldon, your comments?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I was going to say that just to maybe repeat, and maybe this isn't necessary, but to repeat the challenge that staff have faced, and this is through our operational leadership team, through a lot of dialogue and collaboration to put on the table items that would achieve the target. And one of the challenges is that for an item that might be an enhancement or very nice to have, that should not sort of supersede, should not take priority over an item that is required to keep a reasonable service level, when it comes to road plowing, whatever it is. All of those things came first, and so you could see the items that have been put out there through OLT and reviewed by SLT that would hit the target. You can also see that staff have had some challenges there and recognizes that that does not achieve the strategic priorities that council has set. And the way that the budget has been ordered, as you see in the slides, the base service comes first, and then enhancements and those sort of things are added after the base is established, so that you see, what do you need to provide the fundamentals to the community. And that is why you also see staff coming back saying that the target has some challenges, and we want council to take a look at the items set out to achieve that target and whether those are the items that you can live with to hit the target. So we are looking for your feedback, exactly what you're doing, And similar reactions have been expressed around the staff table.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, and I certainly appreciate all that. I've heard that message many times now from the staff around this table. So I'm not deaf to that, but I just want to repeat: we have told our residents that we will be doing 100% of sidewalk clearance by the third year. They're not sitting there calculating that based on 2013 sidewalk kilometers, and I don't want to be in a position where it looks like that we've been misleading people, because that's the way, quite frankly, they'll see it. I don't think we balance our budget by downgrading our parks and the equipment and giving people less than they had before. I'd much rather just keep the old equipment in place then for a longer period of time. Quite often, the equipment is being replaced because we want to give kids and families variety. So we want to do it, but it's not that the equipment is dangerous or is being deteriorated so much that it needs to be replaced. So if we need to slow down that process, that's fine, but I don't think we should be giving them downgrades in their parks. Nobody's been asking for that, and I don't think anybody should have to accept that. Certainly traffic mitigation, this is something that we've been talking about for years and years and years and years and years, and we seem to be really dragging our feet on this, quite frankly. We need to start making some bold moves on this. It is a #1 priority with our residents.
Councillor, I wonder if
Yep.
we could go back to this, because you're repeating yourself. I've got about
Yep.
6 people.
No, I
in
am.
the
I just
queue, and
kind
I've had
of
you in for 16
responded
minutes.
because I felt like I had a rebuttal here saying
What we
that,
could,
no.
what
Okay,
we could,
but
what we could consider is some motions that council could
Yep.
consider for recommendations. But I have about, I still have about 5
Okay,
people
fair
in the
enough.
queue. Okay,
Fair enough.
thank you. Councillor Twinney.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to staff for this very in-depth presentation and all the work that's gone into it. It's really, like you said, there's a lot to take in. And so I do have some questions with clarification for me to better understand some of the things that are on some of the particular slides. So my question is in particular slide number 41. And we show the adjustment for the stormwater management for 2017, 2.60 for this year. But then, so we've taken it, so for me to understand, we've taken that out of our tax-supported budget and have it separate. So, but then for 2018, we therefore don't show, because we've taken it out this year, we don't show it again. So therefore, when we are showing a tax projected increase of 4.83, it's actually not, it's 4.83 plus that 2.60, or is that correct? Because now that stormwater management fee is going to be separate. So if we had left it in, would that be actually more? Do you understand what I'm trying to understand how, it's just, are we comparing apples to apples from 2017 to 2018 or 2019, et cetera?
Okay, Mr. Mays?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. You are correct. It becomes difficult to get the apples and oranges sorted out here. The tax increase, if by this revised option A, would be a 4.83% increase, and one of the large drivers is the carry forwards from 2017. In addition to that, there would be whatever, if there was an increase in the stormwater management rate, that would not be a tax increase. It'd be on the same basis that we would also have an increase in the water rates as well. So that's where the oranges come in. So other rates would probably, possibly, potentially also increase as well, as they would based upon whatever cost drivers they have. So the stormwater management rate, had it not been taken out in 2017, saving the 2.6, then there would have been an increase in the tax. But the tax increase still would have been at 4.83 unless there was extraordinary items in the stormwater management rate. It's just that the 4.83 is based on a smaller base. Because we're taking the, I'm trying to think what the number is, the $1.7 million, whatever the number is, out of the taxes. So it's a 4.83% increase with or without the stormwater management. But the dollar amount itself would be smaller there, and then there'd be an increase in the stormwater management rate, assuming that an increase in that rate is provided for as well. Now, if that rate itself also, by coincidence, was 4.83%, then it would be the same position whether it was in the taxes or not. Perhaps I should, in the information report, maybe I can give an example that maybe that would help clarify it. I am sensitive to the fact that this can be quite confusing.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So,
Yep.
Mike, can I get this like maybe in a dollar comparison as opposed to a percentage increase? Is that in here, or would that help me understand it better? Because I'm sorry, I'm not 100% getting it. I'm kind of getting what you're saying, but I like to see how it works out, how it plays out, I guess, maybe more and then in dollars. Like,
There's some numbers on page 41, or maybe further clarification beyond that on page 41. Jane, is that what you're looking at?
yeah,
Maybe if it's set up differently.
I'm trying to understand the stormwater management on page 41, correct, yes. Oh,
So on page,
oh, okay, which 41's, okay.
yeah, there's, I think that page 41.
Okay, so, yeah, but then this doesn't compare dollars for 2018. That's what I'm looking for. So a comparable, like, of page 41 that I have in dollars.
May I take a quick stab at this?
Yeah, it's an effort to clarify, okay, sure.
Sorry if I can. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I think what Councillor Twinney is asking is why, when we see the stormwater rate taken out of this year's, our tax increase drops down so low, but then the next year it's back up high again. So why is 2018 so high when it's so low? And I think the answer is because just like when you increase taxes for a given reason in a year, if you increase taxes 2% this year, it covers off your cost. You don't add 2% every year in the future. So when you remove something from the budget, i.e. the rate, it doesn't get removed in the following years, and so they're back up to where they would be. It's a one-time increase in taxes or a one-time removal in tax. And I think what she's asking, if I'm correct, is why is 2018's tax rate back up so high? Why doesn't it reflect the lower removal of that throughout the years? Is that, I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
And maybe Mike can explain it better than I am, but I think that's what you're getting at.
I think I understand, sorry, and I think I understand what you're saying, going back to the fact that it's the increase, percentage increase, 4.83, then 3.97, 4.23, the projected increases are actually, it's a percentage increase, but the base is, it's on that new base as opposed, right, so it's not, I understand it, but that being said, I would like to see it displayed better in layman's terms for the general public as well, because I don't think the general public is going to understand that. My person, right? Because it's quite difficult to explain. You know what I mean? And if they look at this, it's going to look like that stormwater, adjustment for this year was kind of smoke and mirrors. You know what I mean? It's really back in there again, and we actually are. So if we have it in actual dollar amounts, what the average household taxes increase will be for the projected cost for each of the, say 4 years preceding, like coming forward, maybe that would be beneficial and helpful to.
And we're getting confused with pages 20, with our page numbers, but on page number 41, the average household funding, maybe we could restate that so it's a little clearer. I think that's really what we're trying to get to. That once the stormwater management comes out of the 2017 base or the 2.6%, you have a new base, and whatever costs for stormwater management will be paid out of a separate
Right.
account. So how can we display that a little more meaningfully?
I think it would be helpful to many people to see that, that sort of.
That could be something we could work on between now and when we get into the budget deliberations.
Yeah.
Mr. Mace?
Yeah.
Can we?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a great idea. We tried various angles and ways to approach this with the stormwater management rate. It can be can be very confusing. And the regional councillor pretty well said it was right. So you lower the total cost, but the budgetary pressures are still there. So the percentage increase still exists. To help explain, what we can do is we can take this slide here, 43, and we can extrapolate this going forward to definitely at least into 18 and put it, convert it into what it would be for dollars and cents for the average household. I mean, we have the 6-year plans, we have a preliminary stormwater management plan, we have the tax projections, so we can convert that into dollars, which would probably make more sense.
Yeah, thank you. That would be, I would appreciate that. That would be helpful for myself, for sure. And just another, I know everybody wants to have comments, and but I just have a question with regards to what's proposed from the Recreation Playbook for 2017. And we've got proposed 2 spray pads, basketball court, Ken Sturgeon, which I think is well under its way, I believe. And then also another basketball court and skate parks. Can you just refresh? I don't remember where exactly all these are going at this point, and what are the projected operating costs for all of these? You know, I think, and I guess my comment in general is that I think we have some extreme challenges ahead, and I think as a community, I think we have to make some tough decisions that we can't do everything. We just can't. I don't think the town can sustain doing everything, and I think we've got to, you know, make some tough choices. We've got a great town, we've got great facilities, we've certainly got lots of, you know, things going on that people are enjoying. So I'm just wondering, you know, there's a breaking point, like how much can we keep doing, even though we would love to have it? So that's sort of more of a comment, but I would like to find out just a bit more overview of the implementation of the Recreation Playbook for 2017 and what are our projected costs for those operating.
Mr. McDougall?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Twinney. In terms of the inclusions in the budget as it relates to the playbook, as is indicated, there's the construction of the actual spray pad in Frank Stronach Park is to occur in 2017, and then the design for a spray pad to go into the quadrant that particularly in Ward 6 is intended for construction in 2018, and then the basketball court is also a 2017 construction project. Now, on the operations that go with it, one of the things that really has been something that has been enhanced this year and will be a go-forward strategy as it relates to whether it's playbook implementation or any other capital projects is to better align the operating implications of the infrastructure into the budget exercise. So, in other words, Council has that full eyes wide open knowledge of what the operating implications would be on a capital item, so it can be considered well in advance of approval of that capital item. So doing an enhanced alignment of the capital with the operating impact. So as it relates to Recreation Playbook projects going forward beyond that, so the skate parks, the community-based skate parks, and the additional basketball court, that will come forward as part of the budget exercise so that Council will be able to determine whether, in fact, to advance that capital project at that time, knowing full well what the operating impact will be. You'll notice this year, I'll give you an example, with the artificial turf field, there's an operating impact of a decision that Council had made at the time in terms of the artificial turf. Now, this year, we're seeing the operating impact. We want to better align that so that Council can see that operating impact with the capital project.
At one time, in the previous books, we used to have decision pages where they talked about the capital cost and then some operating impact. So we're going to develop that a little further. Are there any projects here that, my apologies for inserting myself, are there any projects here that we could delay until we understand what the operating impacts are? So can we define projects that are committed? It's just a question. I'm not suggesting that we do it, but are there some projects that don't have a commitment, say don't have an RFP or something like that? It's unencumbered projects.
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd ask perhaps Mr. Nohammer or Rachel, Director of Engineering, to perhaps comment. But as it was, the implementation of the playbook does involve recreation and culture, engineering services from a construction perspective, and then public works from an operating perspective. And so currently in the plans are the design construction of the spray pads, and as well we're also looking at the basketball court. So those are the imminent ones. In terms of where they're at in their stage of
So they're-
RFP development, I'd ask Rachel to comment on that.
Okay, and I didn't want to look at any of the specifics, but I'm just wondering is if there's some way we can determine if we need to make those kinds of decisions, how that might be prioritized. But if there's a commitment to a project, then that's an encumbered project. Okay, go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have no commitment at this point, so they can be deferred if council so wishes.
And the decision pages, will that include the operating? Did you intend for that to be part of the budget book, Mr. Noemer?
Yes, through Mr. Mayor, we have calculated the operating impact, and there are some projects that are advancing in 2017, for instance, that would not have an operating impact until 2018. So we've identified those go-forward pressures for the 2018 budget in terms of operating impact. Those that do have an operating impact for 2017 have been identified as well.
Yeah, I think that's what you were getting at, Councillor?
Yes.
Trying to help you with
Thank
that,
you.
okay? Councillor Quampas, or, I'm sorry, Mr. Shelton, and then,
Mr. Mayor, just to assist with that one, I think what we could do to make it very simple is to provide you with the proposed capital schedule and when the operating impact comes into place. So some come in 2017, some in 2018, so you'll see what that mix looks like. I know that staff, again, trying to work to hit the target, have scheduled the capital towards the end of the year, so the operating comes into the next year. So I think that would assist you as you determine what we would go forward with.
okay. Thank you, and who do I have? Mr. Mays? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to elaborate. Essentially, any capital project, unless it's a replacement project, is going to have an operating impact. So anything that's new, funded from DCs, there's growth, is going to have an operating impact because it's something new that we're adding to the infrastructure. Anything that is something that we're enhancing is going to add. And in fact, sometimes we haven't defined quite clearly. A replacement could have an impact as well. It may save money or it may additional money. In the 2017 capital program, we identified, and we'll provide you this information on the capital program, as the CL said, as to when the impacts will come forward, that in the growth budget, there are $240,000 in operating costs, which will come into play in 2018. This is why on the projection, we showed no net growth in 2018, because we're using those growth dollars to pay for growth expenses. So this is something new we've started in 2017, trying to match growth to growth. So the assessment revenue will be used to offset those additional growth expenses. So that has been taken into consideration. We will provide you with those details.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. That cover it, Councillor Twinney?
For the time being, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Quampas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that presentation. I know it wasn't easy to try to do the balance and make some decisions and suggestions what should be deferred and what should not be deferred. My question would be, let's look at slide number 9. I just wanted to get clarification of which column would traffic mitigation, speed mitigation be under? Would it be under streets or community projects, or which part?
Safe Streets was the category at 106 that received the second amount of dollars placed in those buckets. So that's the second column across for you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not sure I'm seeing safe streets on this slide.
We just short formed it to streets. It says corridors and then streets.
So
that was actually Safe Streets.
Okay, so the streets. So the second column, which is showing as the second most popular area where the residents would want to choose from. Was that visible when they were making the choices through some of the initiatives that you had, that Safe Streets is actually part of that?
Yes, correct. We did have a whole explanation about what entailed Safe Streets, which was a lot of traffic mitigation measures.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because recently when I did talk to hundreds and hundreds of people, it seems like 90% or around 90% of the people that did respond or we chatted with, their number one priority was traffic mitigation and speed mitigation for that matter. So it was a little surprising to see that that was a second choice. Maybe it's just my ward. But to my point, when we take a look at our priorities and council priorities, that is number 4, ensuring safe streets. However, when the decision was being made to defer certain considerations, I noticed that $50,000 has been deferred. I'm just trying to understand why is there such a misalignment between what the residents are asking for, where the priorities need to be, and then next thing you know, that is one of the choices out of 4 or out of 3 to defer to next year.
Mr. Sheldon? Yep. Okay, Mr. Mays.
I'll attempt to answer that question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We had some very difficult choices to make. We had, as I went through the presentation on the Council 5 priorities, we talked about what was included in the budget. And you'll see that, in fact, for actual new dollars, the only thing was the $100,000 for sidewalk street clearing. We had gone forward on the basis as we reviewed things, and we actually had focus groups to look at each of the different sections, what they would recommend. And we landed on, to be able to hit the target, in essence, we could not put in any of the enhancements. So it wasn't that we were specifically picking on that. We actually blanket-wide said none of these enhancements. The actual recommendation, the original recommendation was to include $186,000 of enhancements. Mm-hmm. We took them out. The only reason that the sidewalk snow clearing, I shouldn't say the only reason, I mean, it is a justifiable thing, but it's still included in the budget because the contractual obligation was made to continue on that, or else we would have had that on the chopping block as well. So it was a procedural thing that to hit the target, all enhancements were taken off.
I would like to challenge staff in order to revisit what was on the chopping block, specifically around traffic mitigation, and see if there's any kind of rebalancing that's possible, mainly because it seems to be the number one priority for constituents and something that I feel very strongly about, and I'm sure councillors as well. I do think that there might be something that's not as much of a priority as that we can start rebalancing.
So what we could do is entertain a motion in terms of prioritizing this or including that and understanding what the implications of that are as we go forward.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor?
That's it, thank you.
I have 2 more people in the queue. Maybe after that, given that it's now 11:30, we could have further questions and maybe take a 10-minute break, and we can come back and deal with any motions if anyone wishes to put some motions forward. Okay. Councillor Broom?
Thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation. I'm sure trying to tell us everything in 48 pages is pretty challenging, so I appreciate the presentation and what you've given here. I'm going to reserve most of my questions to staff on my own, and I'll book appointments to do so. I just want to get clarification on 4 things for anyone in the public who's viewing or has access to this presentation. Regarding communications, slide number 11, I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about this Phase 2 budget game. Maybe not now, but I'd like to understand what some of the things under other might have been, and a little bit more information on how you came to these things, because I find it quite interesting, and I liked the concept, so thank you for that. Slide 16. I know Councillor Twinney touched on this a little bit, but I'd just like a little bit more clarification, again, for anyone who is seeing this. Spray pads, could we review the locations again as to where they're going?
Mr. McDougall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Broom. In terms of the spray pads, there's the one that is scheduled for construction in 17 to go in at the Frank Stronach Park, and then the one that's in design and that would go for construction in 18 currently is contemplated to be at Dr. Margaret Arkanstal Family Park, so adjacent to Terry Fox
Correct.
School.
Okay, thank you. And basketball court and skate parks, is there a location that's determined for that? Maybe you mentioned it, but I don't recall those two items.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Broom, on those two items, and I apologize, I think I was remiss in answering fully Councillor Twinney's question, because now I think she also asked that question. And in terms of the skate park, that's still in some discussion and consideration phase as to whether it would be two smaller community-based skate parks or one larger one. So locations are still being discussed. If it's one larger one, Dennis Park is one area that's been initially contemplated, but again, that would be subject to more internal review, discussion with staff, and some public engagement associated with the skate park or skate parks. And the second basketball court right now is being contemplated to be within Ward 7, so either in the environmental park area or in the new Toth Park area.
Okay, I remember that now, thank you. And I think we were leaning towards one large skate park, but I could be wrong. And I guess my final question is for this 16 is, could you review the timeline for the turf and the Magna Center facility?
Mr. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Broom. In terms of the artificial turf, so that project is in the tendering construction phase. The construction would be coordinated through the York Region District School Board. The public engagement process has been completed. There's some follow-up items associated with contemplating additional plantings and some other ways to help meet the concerns that we heard from the residents. So that project is ongoing. So that would be construction that would occur in 2017 for the turf field. And then for the Magna Center, construction is ongoing. That's for the fitness facility. And so that is scheduled for an opening in very early January. So work is advancing very nicely. And we're on target for a early January opening, which is very important for the fitness facility because of the obvious of connecting with the new year.
Okay, and thank you very much. And my third question is slide 17. And this is just around what Councillor Vey was talking about with the recent park constructions. Ward 1 and Ward 6 were done at the same time. And just as just to put some context into place, one of the parks that was installed in my ward, some of the supports underground broke twice, and the park has had to be repaired once already, and that park was completed in September and was shut down immediately after school started. So again, I know you have no control over these things. It's just, you know, to put something in context, you know, like kids start school and they can't use their park, and it wasn't once, it was 3 times. So just an FYI there. And then my last question is page 19. I've asked staff to provide this before. This is regarding the snow sidewalk clearing. I need to know what streets are being done and when. Whether it's 2017, 2018, that would be very helpful for me to let my residents know. And what is the actual process for any streets that may not be included? Can we have a list of those streets for the ward councillors so that we know what ones are as part of the growth? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bazant.
Thank you very much, and I also want to extend my appreciation for this. It's very difficult to try to be so comprehensive, but I think you've done a great job. My question relates to the new page 30, though, that we got this morning that wasn't in the original Yeah, that one. Because I didn't have that one in my original package. And I just wanted to understand, for the cost drivers, which we've got almost $1 million of cost drivers, is that new this year that we haven't had in the budget previously?
Mr. Mace?
Some of them are, or they're additions. For instance, the hydroelectric costs, these are extraordinary increases. So we're looking at it, I'm trying to think what it was over a 15% increase in the hydroelectric costs. Obviously, we have hydro in the budget. Emerald Ash Borer exists in the current budget at a level of about $240,000. So this is an enhancement to that program, as I believe there is a report to council on that. Artificial turf maintenance, that would be a new item. Swim pond lease, new item. The waste management, this is the additional cost of the new contract that would have been included in there. The revenue right sizing, we did 90% of the revenue right sizing in 2016. So this is the amount that was left over to be picked up in 2017. The animal control contract, these are increases in the animal control contract, and the same on the cell phone costs. These are increases. So where there are increases we've identified that are far in excess, and because of their magnitude of the rate of inflation, and we find them a challenge to be able to keep them in the base budget when we get an inflationary increase for the base budget.
Okay, so then when you look at the cut cost page 32, and then I think, or adjusted service level, sorry, page 33, you have $262,000 for deferring expansion of the Emerald Ash Borer. Is that sort of taking that extraordinary item of 262 and just eliminating that entirely, or was that 240,000, or the 262,000 is on top of the 240,000, of which you're proposing that we could save some costs by eliminating 262,000, or the extraordinary addition? Does that make sense? Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, the base budget, the previously approved budget 2016 is $240,000 for Emerald Ash Borer in the 2016 budget. The request for 2017 was to increase it by $262,000. We've identified that as extraordinary item. So in essence, to bring it up to $500,000. To be able to hit the budget target, we're suggesting to not do that. This was a we're suggesting not to do it, and we have the impacts there, the risk of not doing it, to not do that to be able to hit the budget target. So yes, it's there is a requirement to add it on, and we're suggesting not doing that. So we would maintain at the 240,000 level.
Okay, and then similarly for the hydroelectric costs of 471,000, but you indicated that there's a potential to save 137 by putting some user groups at a different facility. So is that 137 less the 471, or?
Mr. Mayor, the intent there is of the 471 increase, we could mitigate 137,000 of that by finding other measures to reduce our hydro usage. The potential impact of that is to be more efficient in our use of hydro. This could be entail shifting around people from facility to facility.
Okay.
So it would be the net number would be the increase.
So then what I'm trying to understand then, of the extraordinary items of almost $1 million, if we were to go ahead with these cost-cutting measures, how much would we reduce from that 982,000?
Mr. Mace?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the two items, the cut costs and the adjusted service levels, almost exactly equate to the amount that's in the extraordinary items. I believe I said they come to 1.81% of a tax increase in the extraordinary items, or 1.78. So they almost match. So those two pages, 34 and 35, would in essence compensate for all the extraordinary items.
In the old deck would be 32 and 33. For
Correct.
Those who are working for the old deck.
And this is shown, when you look at the outlooks, you can see that, how the two match off. So on new page 39, old page 37, you'll see the extraordinary items and the further reductions almost exactly match each other.
Sorry, the old page.
So if you look at option A, 2018 to 2020 outlook, projected tax increases, which is page 39.
Old page 37.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's it there.
Right.
You'll see under the net base, the extraordinary items and the further reductions, just as you were pointing out, that they do match each other.
Okay. So in order to achieve that, then we essentially have to implement all of those cost savings.
That is our proposal at the time. We've gone through a lot of analysis. We've taken some additional time to weigh and do research on other alternatives. At this time, this is our proposal to do that. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Regional Councillor?
Thanks very much. Just some questions first of clarification. Page 19, and I'm working off the old deck. Are these deferrals, if they're deferred, they're part of the budget A, the one that comes in on target? So this is assumed in that budget as being how we got there? I got that right, I think?
Mr. Mason?
On slide 19, the ensuring safe streets continued, where we have the three items which are deferred for future consideration. The only item that is actually included in the outlook as a carryover is the phase 3, the $50,000 for the traffic mitigation plan. The other two, the snow clearing of courts and elbows and the additional snow clearing for growth, are not factored into the projection at this time.
Into the 2017 projection of the
They're
target budget?
not in any projection. So if you look on the outlook in 2018, included in the, in option A, included in the outlook is a carry over of items from 2017. The $50,000 for the traffic mitigation plan is included in that. That's one of the items. However, the snow clearing of courts and elbows, which would be an enhancement, is not. The sidewalk snow clearing growth is not. The sidewalk snow clearing growth, the $55,000, is something that we would endeavor actually to cover under our net growth, to offset it with assessment dollars. But it is
So
not
some of these
otherwise-
items are in the 2017 budget, assumed in the 2017 target budget. Let's just deal with that one for now. Some of them are in it and some are not?
No. None of these are in 2017. Any items that are defined as being deferred for future consideration are not in the 2017 budget.
I'm saying, are the numbers, the reductions assumed in that budget?
The deferred numbers on
Yeah,
page 19.
that's part of that budget, right? So this isn't further reductions. This is how you got to the 2017 target.
Correct.
Okay, sorry, that's what I meant. I should have said it more clearly. My apologies. The other question I had was back to slide 17. It's been asked a couple times, but can we just define what playground equipment enhancements mean? Not literally each one, but do you mean like fixing playgrounds up? Do you mean adding a little feature onto the side or a whole new playground? And why is it operating versus capital, depending on those descriptions?
Mr. Nohammer?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So this was a decision package put forward by staff to recognize that there are additional requests for playground equipment enhancements. I think that's why it's called enhancements, right? Yeah, enhancements. And this is actually a capital item that would be brought forward. There is some operating impact associated with the enhancements that are being requested, but it's, I'm sorry, it is an operating item.
I was going to say, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's an operating
And
item.
that's what I'm trying to understand. It's
Yeah.
operating, so it's at,
It's an additional decision package put forward for equipment related to further enhancements in parks.
$75,000 in operating dollars to manage, to support or manage some new slides and swings, and that's where I'm struggling with this one. I'm not quite getting how we could, and if those were capital dollars, I get it, we're going to put in some, but that's what it would require, and our resources to support it on an ongoing basis annually?
I'm just wondering, would the budget be able to provide us with that level of detail?
Right, so they are replacements of equipment. However, they are included in the operating budget. It is nevertheless funded from the asset replacement fund. So the funding source is asset replacement fund. And I'm just reading from the decision package here, and it does have to do with increasing costs for the playground equipment, and some of the standards having been changed to reflect a higher standard of equipment that's required. So it is related to replacement of playground equipment in the parks.
So to Mr. Mays, it's in the operating budget, is it because it's the tax supported capital? Is that why it's there?
Through Mr. Mayor, I believe it's in the operating budget because the individual pieces of equipment would be below the threshold for capital. So the financing would be the asset replacement fund, which is what we use for quasi-capital pieces of equipment, but it's considered operating budget because it's not a tangible capital asset.
But if it's coming from asset replacement fund, how does it impact the budget? This is about, anyway, I'll let it go. I'm just confused a little on that one. I don't know if
we could get some clarification on that. Yep.
Later. Okay. The next one is slide 23. We're projecting a surplus of 4.6 million for asset replacement. In other words, we're gonna have funding available. Oh, but 5 million of those is unallocated reserves. So if it's unallocated reserves, is that really a surplus? It just doesn't that mean we're not using? I guess I'm trying to get my handle on this. We had a presentation before about our asset replacement fund and how about water, wastewater, we're in incredible shape, but otherwise we're not in such good shape. So when I look at this, and I believe the deficit was $21 million, when I look at this, it looks like our deficit is going to come down to $15 million or $16 million. But I'm wondering if that's accurate because on the above the line, there's 5 million unallocated reserves. But I'm wondering why, if it's reserves that's unallocated, why that becomes a surplus. That's just, okay. I've probably said enough for you to be able to guide me.
Mr. Mays?
Sorry if my terminology probably is confusing. I should add a little more consistency here. So unallocated and surplus are in essence the same. It just means we actually have money in the bank that we haven't put, though we have specified we're going to use it for asset replacement fund, we haven't defined a specific project for which it is going to be spent. The reason why you're seeing a balance here is not contradicting. This is the previous workshop. This is on a consolidated basis. So this is the water, wastewater, and the tax supported as well.
Oh. Okay. So I guess what I was trying to figure out from this and tie it back to our previous presentations is in terms of the dollars we have that are either coming from gas tax or from our budgeted contribution annually to asset replacement, are we spending more or less? That's the surplus I'm interested in, and is there a path here? I'd like to have a conversation at some point about one way to start addressing that, I believe is $21 million deficit, is not to spend the full amount every year and start to, the other way is obviously to increase dedications to ARF, but the other way is to not always spend the full amount and therefore create an actual surplus that can go against it. I think, but I could be completely wrong on what I'm saying. Am I right? And are we, if this chart doesn't tell me, is this year, particularly in the area of the deficit, are we spending more or less in this fiscal year than is available through the regular funding sources? And therefore creating a true surplus or deficit to go against the overall $21 million deficit.
Mr. Mays.
I believe the totals here show that we are actually spending more than we're actually putting into it. However, the workshop was talking about long-term financial sustainability, so this is looking at it from just an operating point of view on a short-term basis or next couple of years. I'm not seeing anything here that concerns me unduly about the level of spending in 2017 as opposed to we've had in any other year. This is not a drastic decrease, nor is it going into the negative balance. However, further to the workshop on financial sustainability, yes, we do have a long-term issue with the asset replacement fund.
Okay. So eventually, when we develop a full strategy to address that deficit, part of it may involve looking at the annual spend and how we can maybe manage to try to curtail that spend to allow us as one tactic to addressing that deficit.
Mr. Mason?
Yes, absolutely. That is my my intention, and that would probably not be prepared in time for the approval of the 2017 budget, but to look at a long-term strategy for the asset replacement fund, as I mentioned, in conjunction with the asset management strategy, the asset management plan, development charges, looking at the funding imbalance between the different rate group and the tax supported groups, take all those things into consideration, a long-term plan to ensure that we're going to have sufficient funds to replace our assets.
Okay, so yeah, not this year, I understand. Okay, super. We'll try to quit moving, but 32 user groups would need to be moved. What, do we have a sense of what user groups would have to be moved and how impactful that is? That was to save, I think, hydro costs, right? Yeah.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor to Deputy Mayor Regional Councillor Taylor. That's really a work in progress. It's an item that was identified. There needs to be a back and forth discussion between Public Works and Recreation and Culture, and then a check-in with the groups. I'd be happy to provide an information report to members of council on kind of where we're at with that process at this time. I don't have that specifics with me today, but happy to provide that on a timely basis.
Thank you. 36, oh boy, I don't, nope, sorry. Well, yeah, 36 in the old one. We're now, and I say now, and I could be wrong, and I apologize if I am, but we're now using the phrase net growth, and it's 0.5%. And I believe prior to this, we were using growth, and it was 1%. Can somebody explain to me that shift, if I'm even correct?
Mr. Mason?
Yes, that was a good catch. This is a concept I tried to introduce in the November 14th workshop, that the growth, you're correct, the 1% you're thinking of is assessment growth, is the revenues. But against that, we also have expenses. We have expenses which have been specifically identified within decision packages, reacting to growth. And what has happened in the past, we've just netted those two, and that was the net growth. But we know there's actually, that implies that growth not only pays for growth, but it actually exceeds. So we went through the model and looked at what else are growth expenditures. And some of the growth expenditures are things related to the growth capital, which creates operating expenditures as well. In the past, what we've done is we've built our new assets, and then Public Works came scrambling back a year or two later, asking for additional resources to maintain those. So we're trying to capture that now at this point. So I'm sorry, I don't recall the actual numbers. It's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about $100,000 in the 2017 budget. I'll get the exact number in the 2017 budget, which is the outcome of the growth capital that is required. Also, on a go-forward basis, as we build new assets, we have to also provide for them in the asset replacement fund. So when you add all these different components, and I'll provide more of the details on that, when you combine all these components, all the growth expenditures, the expenditures that are generated from the growth capital, roughly match. They probably exceed a bit, but they roughly match the assessment growth. So that's the difference. Where before we said, this is the assessment growth, here's some clearly defined requirements on the growth expenditures. We've expanded that to the type of expenditures. Sorry, I thought there's also another category of growth expenditures, is, for instance, as the town grows, we have more households. That in itself drives up things like our waste management contract, our roads maintenance, and so on and so forth. These are things that traditionally we have not included. We haven't defined them as growth. We haven't identified them as such, and we've just thrown them in the base and try to scramble later to get the monies for those. So that has been the change. So for 2017, proposing no change in that. So that is the net growth. So I believe the growth is about 1.1 for 2017. So there's about 0.57% of a tax increase in actual growth expenditures. in the outlooks, we're suggesting that any assessment growth be applied against assessment expenses, so not using that assessment growth to subsidize the tax rate.
But and on the big balance sheet, let's call it, for the sake of argument, on a balance sheet that would be a budget, you'd have the expenses on the one side and you'd have the revenue on the other. And if the revenue is 1.1, but you're offsetting that, then are we seeing expenses removed from the expense side? And you just, like, one of the ones you referred to was, well, we'll have garbage rate going up, so this is kind of like saying we'll back it out of the assessment growth because we know that cost is coming, but we're also dealing with the garbage rate going up as an expense. So I'm getting confused, and I feel like we're losing revenue, but the expenses are still. It's a really tough concept to just grasp from that explanation. I don't know if we've seen this or heard this before, but this is a bit of a change. I mean, like, to give my example, you just mentioned, this kind of takes into consideration the fact that garbage contracts increase, but or hydro increases or whatever, but we're also dealing with those on other slides as expenses. So shouldn't they vanish from that side too?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when we look at something like the waste management contract, there can be three components to the increase. Within the contract itself, on an annual basis, as we have more households, the costs go up. That is growth, and that should be matched against the additional assessment we're getting from those houses. So we're proposing that we should do that. That's not just the model for waste management, that's for roads and that's for some other items as well. The other component on any increase in waste management is they could have some sort of inflation or indexing attached to it as well. We're not defining that as growth. That's built into the base budget sort of thing. In addition, we're going to have a new contract for the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, whatever the specific timing on that is. And that is having a large increase. That is not considered to be growth because that is not driven by the number of households. So where something is driven by population or number of households, we're defining that to be growth. If it's an inflationary increase or some other type of increase, then we're not saying that's growth. I'll try to explain it a little better within the information report. Maybe if I put the dollars and cents to it, it'll be a little clearer as to that.
Do other communities do this approach with net growth? Wouldn't the other way to do it obviously would be to say, let's anticipate what those growth costs are and just put them in our expense column, and then their expenses, and now we have. So do other communities do this net growth?
I would, none that I'm aware of. I think we're being a bit of a front runner in here, but also what we've seen is in growth municipalities where what has happened, and Newmarket has done this as well, is where you use your growth revenues to subsidize your tax rate. In the end run, you end up with having to catch up on things like your asset replacement fund. You don't have adequate reserves put aside for those things. So that was the suggestion behind that. But no, I could see if there's any others. I'm not aware of any.
Okay, I mean, I guess it does, and I'm sure that's not the intent, but it does sort of ensure that council doesn't spend money in the budgeting process that you feel isn't really there. But I mean, when we're doing all these comparisons with everybody, and everybody else does assessment as a line item, and we always have, it kind of gets into apples and oranges. I don't know. It's very new. I'll wait to read the memo and try to understand it more. And, so I'll keep going very quickly here. So did I hear you right? I think you voided the number the first time, and I think I heard later you referred to that the impact of the garbage contract is going to be $500,000. And if that's so, that's not accounted for currently. So even the sustainable budget does not account for, still has another missing $500,000.
Mr. Mace?
I believe you'll get the details on that this afternoon, but it's my understanding that the increase with the new contract is going to be $515,000. What was not clear during the budget process as we attempted to balance the budget was whether there be any impact in 2017. When we did our workshop on November 14th, at that time, the information we had is there would be no impact in 2017. So we did not take that into consideration, but as you can see on the slide we added, slide 30, which is the extraordinary items, we did put it on the list with no dollars beside it, because at that time we thought there'd be no impact. The outlook that I've shown for 2018 has that full increase, the $515,000 hitting in 2018. Now, council does have some options. If there is an impact in 2017, which I believe will be somewhere in the neighborhood of $65,000 to $70,000, if that was the case, we could factor that into the 2017 budget. Or what we could do is we could take money from reserves to defer the full impact to 2018. So there's some options on that. But the presentation as it is has no impact in 2017 because as we were preparing our numbers, that was the information we had.
Okay, thank you. So last couple of things then is just, I was expecting this presentation, and I'm pretty sure I did this, but I could be wrong. I think in the last time I asked if we could get our municipal comparators or municipal comparators plus and a list of the past 6 years of tax increases as percentage new market compared to others. I'm pretty sure
Yeah, I think that's right.
you recall that?
Yeah, I do recall the municipal comparators request, yeah.
Include that information at this time. We'll put that in the information report.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I guess I'd finish by saying a comment, which is that it seems to, one more than one question is, did the community engagement activities and all of the different activities that took place to try to get feedback and understand what the public felt, was there ever a sense, other than sort of you like service levels or not, did we ever consider putting the question to them in something saying basically like, considering cost of living's at this, construction index is at this, and hydro rates are at this, do you support 0% tax increases, 3%, or 5%? Have we ever just gone straight to the point?
And through you, Mr. Mayor. Not necessarily. The budget game that we did with key stakeholders did actually talk about a funding envelope and what we have and where would you put it, but not specifically in that type of direct terms. We have not. But interesting.
Because it's sort of like it's the decision we're facing to a degree, and that anyway. But don't get me wrong, it's very, very good feedback and a lot of contact with the public, probably more than most communities do, I suspect. So it's a lot of good information. But that's, I guess, so my last, and this is the point I guess I want to make, is that we're starting to talk about possibly making motions about, some people feeling strongly we need to keep these dollars in or that dollars in. And I'm concerned about the full context. I mean, we can start saying we want to do this and we want to do that, but in some ways we're making incremental decisions when we don't even know, for example, if we can actually do the moving user groups and the hydro savings and where this is all leading to. And my real struggle here is, and I'm looking at the very interestingly titled Meeting the Target and Sustainable Solution, which by inference means one is not the other, and vice versa. I guess my question is where's solution C, which is meeting the target with a sustainable solution? And if I'm being told that doesn't exist, I'm going to state openly here, I don't buy it. Maybe it wasn't put forward, and that's fine, and I respect that, because meeting the target with sustainable solution might involve some drastic decisions by council about what kind of businesses we want to be in and what ones we don't want to be in. And you didn't want to put that question to us, or you didn't feel it was a question we wanted to discuss, and fair enough. But obviously, you can meet the target with a sustainable solution if we close the Magna Center, for example. And I'm not saying we're going to do that, but it's obviously there's a way to do it. And I guess I'm sort of throwing out there for council's consideration, staff's consideration, should we be having that conversation? Because I'll be blunt, I trust our staff, and I trust that meeting the target doesn't feel and isn't necessarily sustainable when we're facing ARF deficits of the substance we're talking about, and an asset replacement investment of 0.6 that we might have to shave to hit things, and when our recommendations from previous consultants are higher. But I have to say, as one member of council, it's not sustainable to look at that other chart and say I'm going to be a part of and support 4 to 5% tax increases year over year over year over year. I don't think that's sustainable from the public's perspective and the public's wallet. And so I think we have to then ask ourselves some even tougher questions. And you know what? People probably won't be happy with what the answer looks like, but I'm not sure they're happy with 5% tax increases every year as far out as you can possibly see. And so I guess I feel like, even if it takes a little more time and we're already behind on this one, so what the heck? Maybe we have to roll up our sleeves one more time and look at even some tougher questions and some tougher answers. But I feel like I'm being told by staff professionally, John, you really shouldn't support the target as it is. It's not sustainable. And I want to accept our staff's advice. But the sustainable solution, I think, is sustainable from a fiscal perspective, from the perspective staff's supposed to bring, which is how does this operation run and how do we do it? But what it isn't considering is the public wallet and the public perception, the public feedback. And from that perspective, I don't believe it's sustainable. And so I think we need to think about what is solution C. I'll leave it at that.
Sheldon, is that what was envisioned in the, I think the last slide? Sorry, the old slide 43, in terms of providing additional information or pursuing more sustainable budget reductions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to speak to that. I guess what we're seeing is that we have worked diligently for the last few years to hit the targets established by council, and we've been able to achieve that. This is a message that staff don't enjoy delivering to committee, but we do see absolute challenges in continuing to be the community that we've been by meeting this target. So, I mean, the regional councillor's right that to hit the target in a sustainable way means a significant difference on a go-forward basis. And so in the slide that deals with what will we be doing in 2017, I think it's we're back to a number of items that have been identified over the years and not pursued. They've been brought into the chambers, going all the way back to Let's Make It Happen. And they're items such as, you'll see, special service charges, charges for parking, charges for a different arrangement relative to who pays for the additional levels of service in the Main Street area. You know, it may be a different relationship with the BIA, business reviews, underutilized assets and facilities. That refers to things such as facilities that are not fully used or they're for a very small user group, such as the lawn bowling. That's been on the table in the past. So it is, if you do want to go forward in that direction, we do have to really get serious about the services that we're providing, where we are providing them. So that's what this slide speaks to, and at this point in time, it's a real challenge to do all of that for 2017. So we have tried to identify items where you could hit the target. You can make decisions about your level of asset replacement funding for this year to deal with some of the items, but we certainly had a real challenge in delivering the message and at the same time including enhancements that council has previously proposed. We find it really it doesn't quite match where on the one hand we're hitting a tough target and on the other hand we want to try to include enhancements in it. We can't do that. So that is the message, and if council wants to look at a change in terms of the future so that this type of target is a type of target for the future, then there will have to be some significant changes. There's no doubt about that.
Some of the things that might have been helpful for me would have been the items that were included in the costing of those items. And maybe that might be some of the information we could have when we come forward with the information report. Now I have Councillor Kerwin and Councillor Quapis in the queue, and I'm just wondering if we are going to be able to find time to take a bit of a break. I think our next... Can we wait, say, and reconvene promptly at say 12:20? I know that we've got the 12:30, or no, the 1:30 committee of the whole as well. But I'm ready for a break. I don't know if everybody else is, but 10 minutes would be helpful. Is that okay? All right. So let's be back promptly at say 12:20. Okay.
There's some food in the locker room.
Oh.
If you want to grab a bite while you're at it.
Oh, okay. I'd much rather deal with this. Yeah. So, yeah, the question is how quickly can we get some of those projects on the table? Yeah. Thank you to members of council for returning. I know that we also included a very quick lunch hour on this, knowing that we've got a 1:30 meeting on as well. I believe I had Councillor Kerwin and Councillor Quapis in the queue just prior to our break. Councillor Quapis?
Just wanted to, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to focus on the fact that we are looking at efficiencies and what we can cut back, which is great, and I think that's the right thing to do. But I do think that we also need to take a look at increased revenues a little bit more detailed. So in the old page or slide 31, when we looked at increased revenues, those are great initiatives, but I do think there's maybe other opportunities that should be revisited, and I might be a little controversial over here, but to me the first thing that pops up is parking enforcement, and see what kind of revenues we can do or look at from just putting a little bit more focus on the parking enforcement. And I would like to see if that's possible or not. And maybe other ideas outside of the 4 that we have listed.
Okay. Mr. Sheldon? Sure.
I think I'd have to ask either the commissioner or the treasurer to respond to that, but I believe the budget under either scenario, I believe, is status quo in terms of bylaws, but I'll ask Esther to comment on that.
Okay.
So,
Ms. Armstrong?
thank you, Bob. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have currently budgeted, we are keeping the status quo for parking enforcement based on our current resource level. But we are examining through the updates to our bylaws, et cetera, different ways of looking at enforcement and different technologies that may assist with increasing the ability to enforce. So some of those things will be under review, and the results of those examinations will be brought forward to council in 2017.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Councillor Kerwin? Or Councillor Vague? Yeah, it was Councillor Kerwin. We haven't got you. Press your button there, Dave. Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. Good.
There before. Okay. Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to our Director of Finance. There's a comment there. If we pass the 2.8% for 2017, which is doable, what you're in essence saying, Mike, in my opinion, is that it's unsustainable. And staff does not recommend that we pass a 2.8%, but basically a 4.8%. Am I correct in this assumption?
Mr. Mays?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what we're saying is not just myself, it's as representative of all staff on that. We're saying that there are some challenges if we go with the 2.8% as it is structured, as we currently have it in the budget, that the we're just transferring some costs forward to 2018 and reducing some service levels. As we noted on page sorry, the one where we talked about the compromises.
It doesn't matter
where it is. As it is now, the 2.8% does not fulfill, and we're hearing that through some of the conversations and some of the items that members have identified. We feel that it does not fulfill the council agenda.
Okay, it doesn't fulfill. In other words, Mike, it's hazardous. Mr. Mayor, through you.
It has its risks.
It has its risks.
Mr. Mason?
I'm reluctant to use strong language like that, but as we noted, the 2.8% as it is structured within the budget, the items that we propose cutting as cost cuts and service level reductions, we feel are perhaps not appropriate, not just from staff's point of view, but also looking to what council wants and is trying to achieve. That yes, there are some risks in it as well.
Yep. Thank you. And also, Mike, the extra costs to the waste management contract, which we will be discussing this afternoon, will that affect us in 2017 or 2018?
Mr. Mason?
Mr. Mayor, the presentation shows the full impact being in 2018. So on outlooks, the $515,000 is included in the outlook for 2018. Now, the information we received subsequent to doing these calculations is that there may be some impact in 2017, that we may, for a couple months at a reduced rate, have to increase our charges as well. And that could be potentially in the neighborhood of $70,000. But what we presented does not include that at this time.
Good.
The full impact is shown in 2018.
Therefore, in sum, Mike, when I look at the extraordinary items for 2017, and I'm faced next year with the extraordinary items for 2018, I will be looking at, under waste management, another figure of $500,000. Would that be correct when I come to 2018?
That is essentially correct. So for 2018, extraordinary items include the $515,000 for waste management and a 15% increase in our hydro costs.
So, yeah, and
I wonder if I might clarify, Councillor, is the $515,000 reflected in that 1.58 that you're showing as extraordinary items? In your forecast, your outlook, either option A or B?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The 1.58% shown for 2018 includes the full brunt of the waste management increase.
Okay, so it's reflected there, but it's a significant increase, yeah.
that's correct. That's what we're looking at in 2018. And plus, I know that the hydroelectric costs will go up again in 2018. So I'm not only faced with the $471,000 in 2017, I'll be faced with probably close to $1 million by 2018 if it all plays out. But we'll see what happens when we look at extraordinary items. Counting 2017, and there will be a figure in 2018, and I assume that it will be $500,000 roughly for 2017 and another $500,000 in 2018. So I'm faced with that as well when I come to 2018. That's just my futuristic forerun. Okay, thanks, Mike. Just a couple of other things. And Councillor Twinney raised it. I'm under no illusion with regard to the stormwater management funds or fees that eventually the taxpayer will have to pay. I sit on the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and I know the storm ponds that we have put in over the years are going to be very, very costly to maintain and to dredge and to clean. And I know that because of what we did with Ferry Lake. But I know I have the facts and figures from the Conservation Authority. So I get three basic bills. I get my property tax, and I get my utility bill, and eventually I'll get a stormwater management bill. And I'm under no illusion from where I am today. We've diverted it from the property tax bill into a special account called stormwater management, but I know in the future that that will not be neutral. It will go up, and it will go up sizably. So if I add that to my tax bill will go up a lot more than, and I know that from the Conservation Authority, Mike, okay? So I'm now under smoke and mirrors. My tax bills and my utility bills are going to go up sizably in the future. My property tax bill might go up 2.8% from the municipality this year, but down the road in 2018 or 2019 or 2020, my tax that I get for maintaining our retention ponds is going to be there and be added to my tax bill, whether it's direct or indirect. But that's just my opinion. We'll see what happens down the road. I always look at facilities, and we had a presentation the other day. He called them assets. I didn't. They're liabilities. Every time you put one in, you have the capital costs and you have the operational costs. And my other point is, it's not the staff that has the difficult choices. and I really appreciate all the work that you have put in. But it's council that is going to have the most difficult tasks in the future because of what we allow and what we take out. But I know the individual taxpayer, what he pays federally, provincially, and municipally, and regionally, and everything else, and toll tax and so forth, is coming to the limit. And there's going to come a point where you're going to have to take back. You can't keep putting in, and it's us who have directed that. I mean, when I look back, I look at the artificial turf field, we voted for it. So it's a capital cost, and now we have to maintain it. We voted for the recreational facilities, fitness to go into the Magna Center, saving us some money because we got rid of the cafeteria, the restaurant. However, it's going to have to be maintained. So it's us sitting here, the 9, that are going to have to make some difficult decisions, because I cannot vote myself for a percentage increase that's going to jeopardize the next few years. It's got to be halted, and it's got to be halted now with this council. And it's this council that has to make the decision, not staff. You know, if we put in splash pads and we want them, they cost money to put in and they cost money to maintain. And sometimes they're not even used. I've seen them out west where they're put in and they're not used at all. We come to the Woodspring property that we're going to get back again. And some of that land will be used for recreation. Well, it's going to cost money to put in facilities. And it's going to cost money to maintain it. And we are only a municipality of 2.4 or 24.1 square miles. And now we have to go up. So the tax base isn't going to increase sizably. So we've got some hard decisions, but I believe we're going to have to make them. And I look to our mayor, Tony Van Bynen, to provide the leadership there. And I haven't heard from him yet with regard to this budget, but I'm looking forward to his comments. The deliberations are going to go on for quite a while, and they're going to have to be controversial. So I'm not, and I sit with the group, we have a CPI increase of 1.3%. That's what the CPI is. That's the increase that I get on an index pension, and that most people will get. And yet my costs are going up 4, 5, 6%. And people are stretched to the limit.
Just a matter of clarification, I thought the CPI for Toronto area was around 2.3. I don't, yeah.
I'm only saying that the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan calculated that the CPI is 1.3%, Mr. Mayor, and that's exactly what they gave the teachers as an increase for 2017. And I think OMERS might be 1.5. Okay, but that's the CPI that they've calculated. That's fairly accurate.
Calculations. Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Vey, you were in the queue.
Thank you very much. I'll be very quick. Just following up on something that Councillor Quapis mentioned, looking for other sources of revenues. I know Toronto has an overnight parking permit system. Aurora has introduced one this past year. Certainly there are restrictions regarding snow removal, et cetera, et cetera. And the overnight parking permits that they have is just parking where parking is regularly allowed, but it allows people to keep their cars there past 2 in the morning. I think something like that would be very popular here in Newmarket if residents had the opportunity to do overnight parking on the street, certainly on a permitted basis. That'd be a revenue source. And I think many people would take that up. So I would ask the staff to look at that and perhaps brainstorm a bit too about what other type of revenue-generating enhancements that we can offer that certainly aren't mandatory and people can choose to use or not to choose to do that. So perhaps you can look into that overnight permit parking. And again, our neighbors have introduced it and it's become very popular very quickly. And once everybody else has a chance to speak, I do have a motion.
Okay. Okay, one of the, go ahead, Councillor Hepburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't spoke yet, and I appreciate letting me speak. I appreciate all my council members' comments and staff providing this projection and this report to us. I also do have some concerns about the potential tax increases in the future. The 2017 projected tax increase with the removal, as Councillor Twinney had mentioned, the stormwater management fee being, or percentage being removed of 2.6%. I would say that looking at 2017, we're at a 4.88% tax increase with the shift from the stormwater management being part of our tax base, and I correct me if I'm wrong, and now charging a fee, a separate fee to the homeowners or property owners within our municipality. I think we need to, as a council, we need to look at savings and look at what business we're in, as Councillor Kerwin had mentioned, and make some hard decisions. I'm also looking for our staff to potentially look at further efficiencies within our community and with the operation of our town. And I don't believe 5% tax increase over the next number of years is sustainable at all. People in our community will have a difficult time dealing with a 5% annual tax increase. So some tough decisions to make in the future, and I'm looking to get further information and working with staff and this council to come to something that we can all stomach, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you. The concern about revenue sources has been long discussed at AMO, and alternate revenue sources is a matter for discussion that I think AMO is going to take a position on in the next 90 days, early on in the new year, in terms of the burden that the local municipalities are carrying. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the outcome of that will be, and that will, I think, play out over the next 2 years. I agree that the level of not undertaking some of these reductions is going to be way too high for us. And what I would suggest is that we give some thought to the pages 30, 31, 32, and 33 to give staff some direction in terms of the things that we absolutely would not want to see on the adjusted service levels. There may be some things there that we are willing to consider. And I'd also like to see what the items that are included are costed out at. I think we talked about that earlier as part of and items that are excluded, what those cost impacts are, so that we can have informed decisions as to what items we would like to include and not include. I'd like to also see that 2017 be very focused on looking at our lines of business and taking a look at facilities that we have, what their capacity is, what their capacity utilization is, what the trends are, what the demographics are, to help us make decisions about some of the businesses that we should or should not be in. And it will take a lot of fortitude on council's behalf when I take a look at our earlier discussions with respect to lawn bowling, with respect to the challenges that we had with the Scout Hall. All of those items are items that we'll have to take a very serious and close look at, and we need to be prepared to do so. So if we can't digest, or if we don't feel that it's appropriate that we tax at those higher levels, then we will have to make some difficult decisions. At this point, the request that has been made to us is to submit a budget, a preliminary draft budget, and I would entertain some recommendations or some motions so that council can decide out of those pages what are items that we should either exclude or include, excluded items that should be included, and that form part of the preliminary draft budget that we circulate. And I would like to see both the A and B. And I think that our priority should be, as the regional councillor suggested, item number C is what are the things that we can take out for long-term sustainability, but that should be our priority in the year 2017. So that's where I stand. So I'd like to have a good understanding of what the implications are, the things that I think particularly on pages 32 and 33, that staff has some genuine concerns about in terms of what the impact is, and if we could have an understanding of what items here that simply are not to be taken out, or what items can be taken out. So, Councillor Vegas is in the queue.
Once everybody's finished speaking, because I do have some motions.
I think we've
we're at that
finished
point now?
our discussions, and unless someone else wishes to speak before we do take some motions in. Okay, so I think everybody's kind of
Okay,
made their views.
thank you very much. I'd like to move that included in our 2017 budget, that we have the sidewalk snow clearing for all of the Newmarket sidewalks, much as we promised. I believe that was in the range of about 55,000, but I'll let staff come back with that number.
I think, is there 100 in?
There's 100 in
100
already.
in.
That's another 50,000.
That's correct.
So is the 100 in the included part, Peter, or not? Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's an additional
Additional
55.
55?
I think that's the number.
So for the winter of 2016-17, there is $100,000 included. There is, as I said before, still another phase-in of $100,000 for the following winter, 2017-18.
Well, that's this winter, yeah.
And the additional growth kilometers of 55,000.
Yeah, and that's to have 100% sidewalks, period, done.
Okay, so that's, I'm still trying to determine whether that's 100,000 that we're adding or 155,000 that we're adding.
55.
Just 55?
I believe it's 50. That was the number in here,
Peter?
in our report.
I don't want to overly complicate it, and I think we can provide you with some more information to this regard, but it has to do with the winter season straddling 2 fiscal years. So part of 2017 is November, December of next winter. And, I guess as we had for this winter, decision has to be made in terms of whether you continue the phase-in of sidewalk snow clearing up to the full 100% for next winter, including the growth kilometers. But for this winter, there is funding in to take it to the level of service that's already been communicated.
Yeah, what I'm looking at the 2017 budget and looking at what we'll call next winter, 17-18, but we do have to have that in there to get it started for the first couple of months. So I want to make the motion clear that I would like to see in our 2017 budget, understanding that it's a straddle, that we have 100% of Newmarket sidewalks cleared, so it's the absolute 100% to take us to what we promised, in other words.
If I could just clarify, Councillor, so this is what would be proposed to be included in the preliminary draft budget that we would circulate, showing both A and B, okay?
That is correct, that's fine.
Okay, all right.
So I just want to see the number
decisioning,
there.
yep, we would need to understand the implications, that's really what we're doing here.
That is absolutely correct.
Good.
Second part of the motion is that we do not defer the $50,000 regarding traffic mitigation, so I'd like to see that in our draft budget, not deferred. And the third, I'd like to see, and I'm not going to attach a number to it because I'm not too sure of the number, but I would like to see regarding our park equipment that we're looking to cover the cost to at least maintain the status quo when we're replacing park equipment, because right now we seem to be moving into a downgrade stage in our parks. And again, I don't know the number for that. No number has been put out for that. So, but I would like to see that in our budget.
Okay. We can deal with each one separately.
Did you?
And then some, how much each costs?
It's hard to determine, isn't it?
Yeah, but
what the enhancement is.
It'll appear in our draft, the information coming back to us. We're not making a decision on it.
So we would just reflect the impact of that.
That's correct.
All right.
Now, there were 3 things there: sidewalk, park equipment, traffic. I was treating all 3 as one motion, but if council prefers, it could be 3 separate motions.
Okay, we can do that. We can separate that. Would there be a seconder for that? Councillor Quappies, okay.
For which one?
For the all three.
All
And then
three?
we'll deal with each of them separately. So it's one motion with three components that we'll deal with separately. Okay? Want to speak to that, Councillor Copies?
I totally concur with Councillor Vey. I think focus on traffic mitigation and keeping our standards up is important. It is what the taxpayers are looking for, and we have to find innovative ways in order to include what the taxpayers feel they are paying for. So I will support that.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that further? We can entertain other motions with respect to pages 32, 33, or any other recommendations. Regional Councillor, to the motion?
Sorry, I'm just confused. You're asking about other motions. Is the intention to vote on these first, and is it individually or collectively?
When you're talking, this motion has three pieces to it.
So it is one motion now. It's not three motions.
It's one motion, and it has three components to it, but we can break down each component of that motion individually.
Okay.
Okay?
And will we be doing that?
I'm happy to do that, yeah.
Okay.
So if you want to speak to any one of those,
Yeah.
we'll deal with the first
I'd
one,
be
which
happy
is
to.
the snow.
I guess, I believe I heard clarification. Well, I guess I'd ask clarification. Is it the intent, remember, what we're doing here is putting forward a draft budget. We're not moving any of these permanently in the budget. And what I think I heard the mayor say, and I think I heard the mover say, is that those adjustments would be made to both A and B. If that's correct, fine, but I guess what I'm asking is that the movers would consider only addressing to B. We have a target we've set. We have a model that shows a way to meet that. And I think if council's interested in enhancing even beyond the 4.8, then fine, support the motions, but let's do it to the, let's let the one that's already expanding rapidly continue to expand rapidly and at least provide one model to the public that demonstrates the motion that we unanimously supported. Now, that doesn't mean everybody has to support the target. It's only a target. And it doesn't mean it's sacrosanct, but I think to have that still in existence for consideration alongside the other would make a lot of logical sense. So I guess I'd be asking the mover and the seconder if they'd be willing to apply their motion only to B. And frankly, in which case I probably could support it as long as there's another option there. But in the absence of that, I couldn't support it. Thank you.
As a mover, I'm fine with that. I think it's very fair.
So that would be displayed under option B. Yep. That seems to make some sense because it's already captured and being taken out in A.
Yep.
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 Are you okay with that? Yep. Okay, so that option number B would include those. Okay?
Just a clarification to me. So now we're moving beyond the 2.8% by adding these back into the budget. So it'll move upward. It won't be 2.8%. We're moving towards 3% or 3.4% or 4% if other members of council keep adding things that have been more or less deferred.
Not according to what you said,
There
though.
are two options.
And one would not be doing that.
Option B would be adding these items in. Mr. Sheldon.
Can we just make it clear, though, sir?
Yep.
Can we just make sure it's clear that there's an option A will not be doing that? So
Right.
Option A, correct, comes
Will
in at
still-
2.8%.
and it does not.
That's
Okay.
correct.
And
But
it
once
excludes
you
everything.
move these into B, we're looking at varying from 2.8, John, and we're
That's
going
correct.
up.
Well,
That's
That's what it
going up
says.
from 4.8. in fact.
That's right.
Yes.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's what we're striving to get to right now. Is that correct? All these additions.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we're looking to put something out to the public, we have an A and a B. Is this an option C that would consist of these additions? And then if you go through the cuts and the adjustments to service level, you'd have something that shows a different option. If these are going to be, these items, I think these items might even be in B in part, so it would be B would be coming down. B has the 50,000 in for traffic, for example, just to make sure we're aware of
I
that.
understand. No, I don't want to go up option C. It's getting complicated enough. I'd like to be able to just see, and the public to see what is in the budget, and then we're there with our pencils and we say yes or no. But it's there in our draft budget will go forward.
Yeah, but what I'm struggling with is I'm wondering if that amendment should be reflected in A as well. Right? Because if you're adding services, then you're not getting that 1.8% reduction. So what would that look at if we included the reductions with the exceptions of the the inclusions that we're proposing. Mr. Mays? Just.
With my speaker on, I can add some clarification. Option B, as it stands now, under enhancements, includes the third phase, the additional $50,000 for the traffic mitigation, which was part 2 of that recommendation. It also included an additional and unallocated $100,000 for enhancements. So what it looked at was that we weren't really putting new money in for the council priorities. So option B included $250,000 as opposed to option A, which only includes $100,000 for enhancements. The $100,000 in both cases being for the sidewalk snow clearing. In the case of option B, an additional $50,000, which was the otherwise deferred, which is the third phase of the traffic mitigation, and another $100,000, which hasn't been allocated, just $100,000 waiting for direction from council, how they would spend. So the recommendation as it stands, and my understanding of the third phase of this recommendation is really, that's an operational issue, or it's funded from asset replacement fund. I'll get clarification on that. But in either case, does not impact on the tax increase. So option B right now entails these things that is being recommended.
Okay. So if we're only including, if we include only what Councillor Vague is proposing, then option B would be diminished by all the other items that are included. Is that correct?
Well, option B, if you're not, you'd have an additional $45,000 left in option B. So if it's council's direction or committee's direction to not to lower it, then we would lower it by approximately 0.09% of a tax increase. Option B provides for more than what this is asking for.
Okay. Those items, all of these items on page 33, what's our pages here? 30. The adjusted service levels and the cost cuts are reflected in both options A and B, correct? In option A, they're not the cost cuts are included. In option B, the cost cuts are not included. Is that correct? Correct. Okay. So if we added what Councillor Vague proposes to option B, then we're double counting it, or we're double counting it, right? But if we include only what Councillor Vague proposes, just as one example, then we would diminish the amounts that's contained in option B. Is that correct? Okay. So we're right in both cases, but we're still confused. I'm sorry. Did you want to clarify anything? I think Tom wanted to clarify, and then did you want clarification, Tom?
Yes, I wanted a clarification.
Okay.
Thank you. Going back to your point, Mr. Mayor, so the two items are excluding the park equipment and getting it back to our previous standards. That's $105,000. And I just a question of clarification on the B. And I don't know if we can get that proper slide deck up, so I'm sure I'm on the right one. On the old one, it's number 38, or the new one, I should say. There we go. So the net before the enhancements, there's 3.83 as opposed to the 202, and the enhancements are 0.45. So the difference between the two combined is 2.08. And I don't know, what is our tax rate? Like, what does 1% equal in dollars currently?
550.
550?
Is it 550, Mr. Shelton?
550?
Mr. Mays. You're the authority here, Mr. Mays. What is it?
1% equals $551,795.
Okay, close enough.
Okay. So $1.1 million basically. So subtracting the, I guess what I need to see is what those other items are on the net growth before enhancements, and maybe we could get a report or some information so I'd understand what those other items are to equal the basically the $1 million in my mind, if I'm correct or not, but I'd like to get that information. And now when we look at the 4.88%, is that the 2.60 for the stormwater management? That has been removed from that amount, right? No, it has not.
That's not on page 38, but on page 40 it is, isn't it?
No, if you, excuse me, you'd have to turn to slide, sorry, this is getting confusing, slide 40. No,
Maybe we can use the screen, so.
slide 42. You'll see option B takes it down to 2.28, so the 2.6 comes off it.
The 2.28.
2.28. That's the net enhancement 383s plus the 2.6.
Okay, so maybe you can give me an explanation as to the 2017 of the 2.28 as opposed to the A meeting the target of 2.80. Make sense? It's 2.28 with the 2.67.
2.8 minus the 2.6, or it's 4.8 minus the 2.6.
Correct.
Those are your numbers, right? So this one, so the option B comes down to 2.28, option A comes down to 0.6, I think it was? 0.2, sorry, 0.2 or 2.2.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going back to page 36 as a reference point. Councillor Twinney? John? Did you? Yeah. Okay. Regional Councillor?
I'd like to speak to the motion, I guess, directly. So I think that nothing personal intended, and maybe you've even come to this conclusion by now, but I don't think, I'm not going to support the motion because I believe option B encompasses everything that's in this motion with a little bit of wiggle room. And I would say just leave it there because this is only a discussion point. Option A keeps the target on the table and it shows the public that we have a viable option for the target, and we have another option for consideration that involves everything that Councillor Vague wants included. We're only voting to go forward here to a budget for public consideration. We can still later choose A or B, or we can choose B with some minor adjustments, or A with some adjustments, or frankly, as Mr. Shelton said, option C, which I believe is where we should and need to go eventually. But that's after we go through consultation, the public's engaged, they look and they start to get a clear sense, okay, so this is the pressures, and here's the things you might not get, and here's what it means to stick to the target. And then we can have that conversation with the public, we can have it with ourselves, and then we can decide whether it's A or B, adjustments, or C. But I think because of what you were looking for, as maybe we didn't know when the motion was moved, is involved in option B, I would say we either stand it down or don't support it, and then we move this forward to the community and move the budget process forward, and then we can consider options. I'll say this again, I think it's a little early in the process to do sort of one motions at a time on this item and that item and this item. I think that lays ahead of us yet, and we usually do this, I think, a little later in the process, so I think I'd like to see us, I think staff have given us two very clear options for discussion. There might be another one in the future, there might be some adjustments to these ones, but we've got something to have a clear conversation with, and I think we should move forward in that manner. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to be able to get an understanding of some of the issues that members of council have. I hear what you're saying in terms of maybe this is early to entertain motions, that we just put the budget out as A and B. What I would like to do, though, is then have an understanding that what's being proposed by different members of council, what the implication of those items would be in the overall budget in the end. So we can do it that way rather than just modifying the budget. So, yeah, I think either way could work. So I'll ask Councillor Vague and Councillor Poppies if they'd consider withdrawing that, and that this would be some information that we would receive in terms of what the budget implications are going forward, rather than modifying this budget. Put this budget out for consideration by the community, get the community feedback, and then have it with the understanding of what the implications of your requests are, and have an understanding of that when we get into a more thorough discussion of the budget.
Okay. No, I will not be withdrawing the motion. And the reason for that is the community will always just look at the bottom line, 2.28, 4.23, or whatever it is. And right now, the community expectation for us is that the sidewalk snow clearing, quite frankly. Their expectation is us to be far more aggressive and active on traffic mitigation. And their expectation is that when park equipment is replaced, it's not a downgrade. So I think by keeping this motion there, it's actually putting it out in the minutes that these are, you know, at least myself, think they're very, very important. If we're going forward with just two scenarios without this motion, quite frankly, the community always will just focus on the bottom line numbers. So right now, I'm trying to put it out there in the public record, and there are other implications too, and I'm not going to drill that deep, but these are two big ones, or three big ones, in public record that these are the type of things that are at stake. Doesn't mean we're going to end at 2.28, certainly doesn't mean we're going to end at 4.23. There might be some other savings or areas of revenues that we can identify between now and the end of the budget process. But I think these are three very, very important things to the community that I don't want buried when they look at that bottom line, because I can tell you everybody will just point to the smallest bottom line. And as you've heard me say it before, a balanced budget, a zero tax increase is easy. A balanced budget is tough.
Just a point of order to clarify then, and maybe you didn't intend to do that in the first place, but you did earlier agree to only adjusting B, but B already has them in it. Right. So what then is your motion doing if A stays the same and B already has them? What's your motion achieving?
Be correct, and perhaps it would be better to have it included as A or A1 or something like that. What I'm trying to achieve is get people a little bit less focused on that bottom line and let them know what the implications are. And these are three big ones, implications, looking at our budget going forward. So that's what I'm trying to achieve, and I'd like to have that as part of our record, as part of a motion.
So
highlighting it, in other words.
Still, as a point of order, I'm still not clear on the motion and what it's doing to these two, I guess, to be honest.
Okay.
To be frank, I'm not.
I understand that. I'm open to suggestions on how to capture that. Mr. Sheldon said perhaps C, meaning budget A plus these becomes a C. I'm pretty open on how to capture that, but I think this early in the discussion, it's important for us to speak openly and for the public to be aware of what's at stake when they're looking at these different bottom line numbers, because generally the public is not all that aware. They just got to focus on the numbers.
So it's captured as a deduction in item A and included in option B. So maybe option C might be the third option that we would have to consider. So that would be
B. So it's option A plus these three items, which would become C, and then you do have a B there already.
Okay. Plus items that we insist on being included in option A, right? That's really what you're getting.
And that's what C would be, A plus these. And
Is that clear enough, Mr. Sheldon, in terms of what we're trying to accomplish? I just want to make sure that everybody gets a good understanding and that people understand what we're trying to accomplish.
That does help, Mr. Mayor. There are a couple of other refinements that we can talk about just before you finalize on that. I'm thinking of things such as tonight, Council adopts a Committee of the Whole report that deals with the accountability officer. So Mike has referred to further refinement. There might be a little bit of refinement on B as we move forward, and we'd like to incorporate those refinements.
Okay. All right. So having said that, this would be demonstrated separately from option A plus. So option A to include these items. That's the nature of the motion. Is that? You want to speak to? Well, that's what I mean. Option C is actually reflects option A plus these items.
These three.
Including these three items in plus option A. Okay? It's not going to get any easier. Any further discussion on that motion?
Well, we're dealing with all the three items of traffic. I'd just like to make a comment.
Okay, we can deal with, first let's deal with the snow. Then we'll take the vote on the snow. If you want to speak to the snow, let's do that.
Well, I think they're...
Deal with it separately.
No, we can deal with all three because but I just want to speak, as one of them is traffic, I'd like to talk, we've talked about snow, I'd like to talk about the traffic. And as Thomas included it, he wants it back in at 50,000. And we'll see how the vote goes, but we have a talented director of that department, and she's assembled with her 3 excellent traffic consultants and so forth, but eventually I'd like to see some concrete movements of what we intend to do across the town, Mr. Mayor, that's all. And I assume we'll do that because she showed us what she has. Okay, that's it.
All right. So, again, any motion, any motion can be dealt with separately. Does anybody wish to deal with the motion separately? Each of these items separately? No? Okay. Okay. All right. Councillor Twinney, speaking to the motion?
Sure. I guess, you know, I mean, I'm just trying to understand this. I don't mind supporting it just to see what the picture looks like. I guess that's what we're voting on, is just to see what exactly those 3 items are. Am I assuming that's...
That's correct.
That plus any other motions that we might entertain.
Right. I mean, I will support it for that reason, just to see what the picture looks like. But then I think then we're going to be looking at what are other options then, and I'll bring this up maybe in the next motion, is then we're going to have to be looking at perhaps other enhancements or other areas to cut to keep at our target. So we need to, you know what I mean, we need to look at that as well. So, I mean, I will support it just to see what it looks like, but I'm not saying that I'm not supporting a higher tax increase.
Fair enough. Okay, Councillor Quappies?
I'm not supporting the higher tax increase. I don't think that's the goal of it. But I do support Councillor Vey's motion to make sure that we reflect the taxpayers' issues or what they're asking for over and over again, maybe as a separate item, option C or 1A. But I do think that we also have an opportunity for including not just cuts, but also increases in revenues. And I want to stress that one considerably, because I do think that we're missing the point where there's opportunities that other towns or other cities might be realizing, such as what Councillor Vey mentioned earlier, overnight parking, maybe more enforcement when it comes to parking, anything that I don't see in this budget at this moment where it is a revenue generating portion that might likely offset some of these initiatives that we want supported. So it might be revenue neutral, it might be even positive, it might be negative. Right at this moment, I don't know, and I would like to know what these numbers are. And I'm not specifically saying that we need to hire more people. There could be other directions, such as outsourcing certain enforcement or outsourcing certain areas where it is beneficial to the town. So as the motion, such as option C, if that's what it is, or 1A, I would also like to include the opportunities of revenue increase.
Thank you. Mr. Shelton, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get the incremental value of those items, or is that possible? Let me just ask, is that possible to include in the distribution for the December 12th, as far as the revenue pieces go?
Be for the January meeting?
Okay.
Yeah, I think the staff will have to reconvene and to see if it's possible to identify any that may be achievable, and it might be one where it's achievable mid-year. You know, so we do our best to identify that. And there might be a risk associated with it, but we can certainly try our best to identify it. There may be one or two that we've covered in the past that, you know, may be achievable, but will be potentially controversial, you know, as they have been before.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Regional Councillor, to this motion?
Yeah, I'll speak quickly. My apologies to Councillor Vey. I'm not going to support the motion. I think there's so many other things that could be involved in option C, such as new revenue. This is a process and work, and we have to get there. And I think that if those three things weren't involved in option B, I would get it, but it's there. And I get that you want to highlight them, but maybe there could be a board at the meeting that says, you know, council's asked for specific feedback from the public on these three in particular. But I think having it starts, I just find we're trying to get feedback from the public, and it gets more and more complicated. This is really just option A with 3 items. And I'll be honest with you, and I think Councillor Twinney is saying it, but where I lean is, we're told that budget's not sustainable, and we're adding more cost. And I think this is a time where we need to be thinking about what we're not doing, not about what we're going to do more of. And so I don't philosophically lean in that direction, and I also think it complicates the 2 options. And we have, you know, a staff recommendation here with the 2 clear options, and the B involves these 3 areas and can be discussed with the public as those 3 areas. And if we want to highlight it another way, but there's so many others we could take the time, and we're out of time. But that should maybe be included in a proper option C, but we don't have time to really figure out what that option C would fully look like, blending some of the sustainability issues with some of the council direction issues, with some new revenue issues to get, I think, what is really a viable C. And I think that's called the budget process. I think we'll probably land on option C, but we've got to get there. And so I think because the things that are being asked for are already included in option B. They're included, we can discuss them. I think a third option doesn't help the public conversation, and I think that, and I think we need to do more work to have a proper option C as opposed to one that's curtailed because we're out of time.
Okay. Councillor Twinney, then Councillor Broom, then Councillor Hempel.
Just to follow up with regards to increased revenues, is a slide that's up on the screen now. We've got some there, but maybe I know I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago. My recollection, I can't remember exactly, but perhaps we can have that report circulated again to all members of council with regards to our, I know staff did a very intensive look at revenue sources, and I think was a lot of time spent on that. And I think that would be really helpful to, you know, show that we, you know, have been looking at different revenue sources, which is great, and I totally support always looking for new revenue sources, and I, you know, would support definitely looking at parking passes for overnight parking. I think I get requests for it all the time, so certainly would support it. I don't think it's going to bring in the type of revenue that's going to be able to cover some of these extraordinary costs that we have, but I totally support it. But maybe if with that report is easily accessible, that was brought to our budget process. I think it was 2 years ago. I can't remember. Would be helpful for us as some of and it looked at different areas that we all looked at. So
Can we take that as a direction to staff? Yeah. Okay. And I'm wondering if Councillor Poppies' request could be a direction to staff as well to be reflected there. Councillor Broom?
Thank you. And I agree. I think we're probably going to see an option C or even an option D, and I think it would be wrong to go ahead with an option C now when there's a lot of other things here. I have a lot of questions for staff, a lot of numbers that I need clarification on, so I would like to go to the public with just 2 options now, and see maybe an option C and a D later in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Twinney?
Sorry, just to also, I guess if we're looking at different areas, I think it's important that we also, as direction to staff as well, and I brought it up earlier, to get a better idea of what the operating costs are involved in the proposed recreation playbook implementation of the spray pads and skate parks as well. That would be helpful.
Okay, that's as a direction. And again, I don't know whether I mentioned the items that are included in the budget. If we could get I'll add that to the direction to staff in terms of the items that have shown as included. We could know the dollar amount. And I think we should indicate whether or not they're encumbered dollars or not. Councillor Hempel?
Actually, that's fine now.
Okay. So, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, it looks like we have an original motion by Councillor Vey, which includes 3 parts, and then it looks like there is a motion to amend that motion to also show the impact under option A. So that would be the first motion to amend, and then it looks like there is a second motion to amend to also include revenue opportunities.
I think we spoke to the revenue opportunities. I don't know whether or not
We spoke to that.
Yeah. And if
If
you're
there's
happy
a
with,
report that's already been generated previously, I'd be satisfied with that.
so we take that as a direction to staff. I didn't see that as an amendment.
No, I didn't see that either.
No, okay. So just for clarification, then, and if we're looking at, I think didn't the motion evolve to an option C?
Which is the same as option A
Plus those other three, that's right. So it wasn't that we would deduct it from option A, but it was better displayed as an option C, but would reflect option A with these additions. That's really the substance of this motion, of this motion, okay? Okay, so that's okay, Regional Councillor?
If Mike Reed's able to do it, can you quickly total the three amounts? 200,000, so 210,000. So it's probably, what of a percentage of a tax point? It's going to be a third of a tax point?
Mr. Mays? Let's ask the expert. Mr. Mays?
I understand the motion correctly, is adding $105,000 to option A, being $50,000 for the traffic mitigation, the third phase, $55,000 for expanding the sidewalk clearing for growth. That's $105,000. $105,000 represents 0.019.
No, but there was also the park.
Yeah, I don't believe that will have a tax impact. That would be either funded from the asset replacement fund or be an operational change. So that's a 0.19% tax increase. So if you look at option A right now, which has a 0.18, that would become a 0.37.
So again, I just close by saying this to Councillor Vague's home point, that people look to the total. They're going to be looking and they're going to say, you got 2.8, you got 2.98 or 99, which are going to seem very, very close to the public, and you got 4.88. It just seems like to have a whole target that's to emphasize these three areas that is so close to the other one. But if that's your will, that's fine. I'm just.
Yeah, all I want to say is I didn't want to move to 2.88 or other things. That too, and there's the 4.88. I'm sorry, and I think I'm quoting the correct number. There's so many other things in that too, and so I didn't want to bury it in the least attractive package. Right. Let's put it that way. Okay, so I just want a plus. It's 105 because the park equipment is probably elsewhere in asset replacement or somewhere else. So it's I wouldn't call it minuscule. It's $100,000 is significant, but I really just want. I think these are important, and that's why I'm highlighting it for the residents. And if it has a very small impact on option A, let's just show that it has a very small impact on option A to move this in there. But I really do believe that these things are priorities with our residents. And they let us know that.
Thank you, Councillor Hempen. Then I think we're obliged to adjourn and start the next committee of the whole. I guess we could get a 2/3 majority to delay the next committee of the whole, correct? Because we have 10 minutes from the 1:30 start time. Yep. Yep, and there still is a motion, but yep. Okay, so Councillor Hempen?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the councillor would consider an option C and adding it the 0.19 to have a 2.99, which would include the snow plowing and the traffic.
And then come back with just information on the park equipment, which we think is going to be.
It's asset replacement.
Yep. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just want them highlighted.
Option.
I don't want it carried in deep.
Okay. All right, I think we've discussed this thoroughly. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, and the essence of the motion is that there be an option C, which would include the $105 for those two items. Right, that's the essence of that. Yep. That's the intent.
No more comment.
Yeah, 2.99.
Yeah,
which
it would
include those snow clearing.
Yep. So you see that as a friendly amendment because it excludes the park. Okay, so that's friendly, you're saying? Are you saying that's friendly? Okay. All right, so the friendly, with that friendly amendment, then the option number C would total 2.99 is really what we're saying, right? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Okay. Now let's get back to the original recommendations of the report, and that is that we distribute the preliminary draft budget, subject to the amendments in this motion. Could I have a motion with that respect? Councillor Vague, Councillor Clapis. Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Take a motion to adjourn so that we could start our next committee of the whole meeting. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Bazans, Councillor Broom. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Yeah, we need 5 minutes because I think we're still within our guidelines with 5 minutes. We can get up to 10 minutes. Yep. No, we have to start. We have to start by 1:40, otherwise the meeting is canceled. So we may as well just stay here. Is that not correct, Madam Commissioner? Is that correct? Turn my mic off. So David, on the additional revenue,